We're going to go ahead and get started. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Sidney Franklin, Jeff Moore, Patrick Morris, Michael Pate, Dave Rosacker is Vice Chair, and I am Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslaw, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Robert LaRocco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Debbie Hightower is our Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. I believe just right here. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial, therefore will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you'll have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communication to board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they're made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in the room here, and I don't believe there are any changes to the consent agenda. I will start off by saying that agenda item number 15 has been withdrawn. I'll get started with the reading of the consent cases. Agenda item number 3, case C1422-225. Applicant property owners. It is on for approval. Request vacation of a portion of Sargent Street between 34th and 35th Streets. This was laid over from our August meeting. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 5, case C3-22-300. Applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. It is on for layover. Request approval of the Southside Terrace Indian Hill Transformation Plan. Location, an area generally bound by L Street on the north, South 27th Street on the east, Y Street, Upland Park, and Washington Street on the south, and South 36th Street on the west. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 6, case C3-22-301. Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha is the applicant. It is on for layover. Request approval of amendment to the land use element of the city's master plan regarding the Southside Terrace Indian Hill Transformation Plan. Location, an area generally bound by L Street on the north, South 27th Street on the east, Y Street, Upland Park, and Washington Street on the south, and South 36th Street on the west. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 8, case C10-22-288, applicant Bethany Lutheran Church. It is on for approval. Request approval of the major commercial corridor overlay district. Location 4200 North 204th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 10, case C10-22-290, applicant Habitat for Humanity of Omaha. It is on for approval. The request, rezoning from R435 to R5. Location 3066 and 3068 Belvedere Boulevard. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 11, case C10-22-291, applicant Anyade Tamaru, hope I said that correctly. Request, it is on for layover. Request rezoning from R435 to R5. Location 4206 Ohio Street. Anyone wish to have this removed?
I'm sorry, what does layover mean?
Go ahead, Eric.
The recommendation report is proposed to lay over to either next month or a future planning board month. Basically, if it's laid over, there would be no public hearing on it today. If you want to speak on it today, you would pull it from consent to discuss on its regular agenda order.
Okay, so we want to do that.
You
Okay.
want to pull it off?
Okay.
We want to discuss it today.
Okay, so we'll pull it off consent.
Okay. Okay, we'll take an agenda item number 11, and we're removing it from the consent agenda. Moving on, agenda item number 12, case C10-99-44, applicant Dragon Storage. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Waterford Crossing, location 7110 North 154th Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, we will do so. Agenda item number 12 is also removed. It was on for approval. Continuing on, agenda item number 13, case C10-99-84, applicant Walnut Acres LLC is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for West Point. Location 15526 Spalding Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 14, case C10-22-292, applicant City Sprouts. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R435 to DR. Location northwest of 3rd and 4th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed?
We would also love to discuss it, yeah.
You want it removed? Okay. Agenda item number 14 is taken off of consent. It was on for approval. Agenda item number 15 has been withdrawn. Agenda item number 18, case C10-22-297, C11-22-298, applicant Slusky LP. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R5 pending to R6 with approval of a planned unit development overlay district. Location southeast 210th Avenue and I Street. Anyone wish to have this removed?
Not that one.
We were on agenda item number 18. Okay. So we're going to leave it on consent? Okay. Continuing on, agenda item number 19, case C8-20-209, Applicant, Tony Barnes. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the special use permit to allow outdoor sports and recreation in the AG district. Location, 4906 South 180th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 20, case C8-22-302. Applicant Big O Auto LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow automotive sales in the CC district. Location, 3217 North 90th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Finally, agenda item number 21, case C7-22-299. Applicant Brian Perry. It is on for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow auto repair services in the CC district. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe overlay district. Location 20343 Blondo Parkway. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Those are the consent cases. Do we have a motion from the board for the?
Do you have a question on a case of whether it should be off the, okay. Okay. Yeah, if the case wasn't called, it'll be heard in the regular hearing, and then only those cases that are pulled off consent will also be heard. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Do we have a motion for the cases on consent for approval?
I motion to approve agenda items number 3, 8, 10, 13, 18, 19, 20, and 21.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Page?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Do we have a motion for the cases on for layover?
Motion to lay over cases 5 and 6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Page?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Okay, those cases that were on consent and were left on consent, no further action will be taken today on those cases. You are free to leave or you are welcome to stay. It's up to you. The first two cases are administrative only. There'll be no opportunity for public testimony. Agenda item number 1, case C10-21-169, C12-21-170. Applicant Daybreak LLC. Request final plat approval of Daybreak, lots 118 through 193, outlots D through I, with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location north of 192nd and 4th Streets. You sat down just in time, Eric.
Perfect. All right. So the preliminary plat for Daybreak was approved by City Council in August of 2021. This is the second phase, which includes 76 single-family lots and 6 outlots. There are a few items that will need to be worked out before the final plat can proceed to City Council, which are listed as those in the recommendation report. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 5 conditions in the report prior to City Council.
Any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the rezoning from AG to DR and R4 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 5 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Moore? Morris? Page?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Agenda item number 2, case C10-21-169, C12-21-170, applicant Richland Homes LLC. The request, final plat approval of Daybreak lots 194 through 300, outlots J through M, with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location, north of 192nd and 4th Street. Eric.
Okay, similar to the last case, this is the next phase of Daybreak, so we'll consider this the 3rd phase, but it has a different developer than the previous phase discussed. So this 3rd phase includes 107 single-family lots and 4 outlots. There are a few similar items that need to be addressed before City Council. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4. approval of the final plat subject to the 6 conditions in the recommendation report prior to City Council.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from AG to DR and R4 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the conditions in the staff report prior to forwarding to City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 6-0.
Moving ahead, agenda item number 4, case C3-22-284. Applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of amendment to the city's master plan regarding the Housing Affordability Action Plan. Location, City of Omaha and the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. Mr. Fanslau, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Rosenbaum. I'm Dave Fanslau. I'm the City Planning Director. Thanks for having us here today. Like we talked in the pre-meeting, this has been a big effort for our group and for all of our partners. So I'd like just to take a couple minutes to kind of kick it off, and then there's going to be other people speaking besides myself. So we're here because the state legislature passed LB 866 sometime in August of 2020. It's known as the Municipal Density and Missing Middle Housing Act. It requires the City of Omaha to do 2 things. First, we must submit a biannual report to the Urban Affairs Committee with the actions that we're taking to address affordable housing in our jurisdiction. Our first report was submitted to that Urban Affairs Committee in July of 2021. The bill, LB 866, also requires the City of Omaha to produce a affordable housing action plan. That plan's due to be, it has to be approved by the city by the end of the year, that's why we're here today. This is the first step in that approval process. After this group approves the plan today, it'll move on to City Council. Pretty fast schedule because we want to hit that December 31st deadline. There are a lot of people to thank that got us to where we are today. First of all, my staff, Eric England, Derek Miller, Kelly Johnston Dorsey, Mike Carter, Greg Paskatch. They pretty much took this project, took hold of this project and coordinated it through the department, did a lot of outreach with our staff. Obviously, we did a lot of outreach to the community. We had stakeholder groups. We presented at other events. We had committees. We had a whole bunch of input, public input on this project itself. But the bulk of the work was done by those 4 or 5 individuals, and they deserve a lot of the credit for where we're at today. I also like to thank our contractor, Amy Hazy from RDG. She's been fantastic to work with. We engaged RDG about a year ago, went through an RFP process. They were selected. She's been excellent to work with, and we really appreciate her support on this. Need to thank the partners that we worked with. Those include numerous nonprofit organizations, the philanthropic community here in Omaha, housing advocates, housing developers, and their representatives, Omaha by Design, the Omaha Land Bank, the construction trades industry. We engaged some of those folks to talk about what's being built out in the field. So that was very helpful. I'd also like to thank Mayor Stothert for her support, and for the Council Planning Committee, which is Councilman Harding, Councilman Festerson, and Councilman Don Rowe, for their input and support. We've engaged them. Yesterday, we had briefings with all City Council members to introduce what's before you today. So I'd like to kick it off and thank everybody for being here today. And with that, I think Amy Hazy from RDG is up first after me. You have a question?
Real quick, Dave, just want to say thank you for your work and the staff that you put together and the group that you put together.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation upstairs in our pre-meeting. Thanks for all the literature you put together for us. It was very, very informative. So
Sure. Well, you're
thank you
welcome.
very
If I
much.
didn't stress it enough, my staff is fantastic, and they do an excellent job. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chairman Rosenbaum and other board members. Greg's going to bring up the presentation here. He's the IT guru today. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's hard to believe that I think about 11 months ago, we were just, yes.
don't forget we need your address.
Oh, yes,
name, and-
yes.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
No problem. Amy Haase with RDG Planning and Design, 1302 Howard Street. Again, pleasure to be here. Hard to believe that we were just kicking this off about 10, 11 months ago. So it's gone fast over the last year. We want to just hit on some of the highlights that are in this plan. The core document is what is here before you today, but there are a couple supplemental documents, 2 supporting documents that provide, if you love data, you can delve in and dig into a little bit more. Why should a community, we talk about the LB 866 as being one of the catalysts, but there's really some other core reasons that a community like Omaha should be looking at housing and housing affordability. Estimated today, we have about 55,000 households that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. We've lost 7,000 units over the last decade that are affordable to households making less than $50,000 a year. And in the next 8 years, we could lose another 2,000 units that are specifically dedicated to affordable housing. And as you probably are all aware from what you see before you, it is not easy to build a new unit that meet those standards today. So what does this study do? Well, it really begins to provide, first of all, it provides a snapshot of where we are today, trying to give us a sense in time, a snapshot in time of where we are. It also hopefully begins to assess what residents' housing's concerns and what their priorities were. Based on those 2 things, beginning to develop what are our goals and what are some of the potential strategies for accomplishing our goals. And then obviously, as noted, it begins to address, it does address our LB 866 requirements. I want to hit on a couple terms that we use commonly all the time, but maybe the general public doesn't always is a little bit like, well, what do you mean by that exactly? So affordable housing, when we're talking about affordable housing, that's housing for which an occupant is paying no more than 30% of their gross income. So it doesn't matter what you make, you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your income on housing. That also then ties into being cost burdened. So if a household is spending more than 30%, they are considered to be cost burdened. We also talk a lot about missing middle housing, which is part of even the name of the legislation that we keep referencing. So middle missing housing really is a range of housing that's house scale buildings with multiple units usually in them, compatible in scale and form with detached single family homes. They're usually located within a walkable neighborhood. So a lot of people often reference something like the Dundee neighborhood has a lot of our missing middle housing historic patterns in it. We also provided some pictures because pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And so we try to describe what we're talking about from accessory dwelling units to small scale multifamily up to our larger scale multifamily. Just really quick highlighting some of the market assessment. I think there was a lot of data in there, but one of the things I just want to emphasize is that Omaha really hasn't been producing enough housing to meet the demand for several years. This is not an issue that's new just during the pandemic. It was occurring before that. At current building rates, Omaha and its jurisdiction will not keep pace with the projected growth, which means our vacancy rates continue to drop, which means often, usually, that prices will go up. So what does that mean as a community? Well, that means that by 2030, we're going to need about 18,000, just over 18,000 affordable units in the next 10 years or so. Roughly 29,000, almost 30,000 units, but 18,000 of those being on the more affordable side. Other studies have looked at the region and looking at our 20-year demand that we're going to need about 80,000 units over the next 20 years. And again, we're taking the opportunity to kind of take our snapshot here and what are some of the immediate priorities that we need to be doing to address the issues that we have. I would give big kudos to staff again, as Mr. Fanslau did with regards to the public engagement and the public engagement effort. I would say this was one of the more robust efforts that I've seen a community do around a housing study. There were 7 sessions held within and around the city that engaged over almost 190 residents. We had 35 listening sessions, small group listening sessions that engaged over 300 participants. We had an online survey. There were other community events that staff went out to. from different festivals like the World Refugee Day to the Omaha Freedom Festival to just doing other kind of one-on-one activities with our different service providers and nonprofits around the community. We also had a website where we had a virtual open house and information was available to the public to review and provide us some comment on. All of those things then begin to build to what did we begin to frequently hear. So some of the, it's really hard. We heard a lot of good things, and it's often hard to say what are kind of the common things that we're hearing. One of those key ones being the obstacles to find housing. Those obstacles being things like our increasing costs, the quality of the unit that we're looking for in the cost range we have, units in our desired neighborhood, having a unit for the stage of life that we're at. We often talk about the fact that at different stages of life, we often need a different housing option, and making sure we have that to create kind of that healthy housing market. And many residents noting that that was sometimes lacking. Location of housing, so having housing, affordable housing that's close to transit, that's close to active neighborhoods, is being something that was really important to the residents of Omaha. Desired housing types, that we again have that full range, more options, that we need more options both in the types of units, the size of units, our price points, maintenance free, accessibility being very important also, and tying across all of those other categories. Also approaches to affordability. That affordability was kind of that overriding concern, and we need to be thinking creatively is one of the things that our residents encouraged. And then for housing for all, that we're providing that safe, affordable housing for our marginalized populations especially. So kind of a little bit of a high level of the process, and then I'm going to hand it off to Greg to talk a little bit about what we learned from the market analysis and from the public input, and how that began to grow into identifying the goals and strategies that are laid out within the plan. But a little bit more background on how we got to this point. The draft document became available on September 23rd and was open through October 14th for public comment. We're having the open house here. We conducted an open house also, we also did, and that was at UNO. We did staffed at office hours at 4 different locations and received numerous emails from individuals in different organizations that provided their input on where we are today. So I'm going to hand it off, I believe, now to Greg and let him take it away.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Greg Paskatch, City of Omaha Planning Department. So out of the public engagement and the market research that was done, 5 goals came out, different strategies associated with each. So the first goal, as you can see here, is increase the types of housing to meet current and future needs. And really, there's a lot of strategies that tie into this. You definitely get into some on the zoning side. So at a high level here, these are kind of the general buckets that fall into. But one is prioritizing the existing funding that the city has, or future funding, working with state partners as well to prioritize funding that support missing middle housing types that are mixed income projects, or again, advanced universally designed concepts in housing products or accessible housing. Recommendation of the city establishing a development fund to expand and protect the number of affordable housing units. So we'll see later, preservation is another goal. So having additional resources towards that is great, especially unrestricted from say federal or state or other regulations that can sometimes make it more challenging to utilize. I mentioned revisions to Omaha's zoning ordinance. So there's several there. You get into making ADUs allowable by right in districts R5 through R8 and TOD. ADUs allowed by conditional use permit in R1 to R4. You also get into, we need to make a recommendation of evaluating site standards. So if there's a way to look at setbacks, lot widths, depths, to create the opportunities for more diverse housing products to be created. So you can see, look at costs, maybe review and update plumbing code and see if there's opportunities to create cost efficiencies through code. Also in here is some recommendations to TIF, so the tax increment financing program, whether it's a requirement that a certain percentage of units are created or are required in TIF-funded projects, or payment in lieu of if they don't meet those percentage requirements, or it could be one-for-one replacement of displaced units that occurs because of the project development. So it mentioned preserving affordable housing. So a lot of the affordable housing that's out there, right, is naturally occurring affordable housing. So they're units that are simply by location, age, condition, are just lower priced units. And so it's important to make an effort towards that. And you see a reference here to the new construction costs. We're all aware of inflation and the impacts that has on cost. The median sale price of an existing home is less than $250, but for construction, for newly constructed home, it's $375. So that's a challenge for a lot of people, and it puts it out of reach of a lot of folks. So with that, the city does have some existing programs to support preservation, and you'll see a few items here that relate to evaluating those programs, seeing if there's additional funding that we can acquire to support those programs, and in addition to making sure the outreach and marketing is good to target those in most need in utilization of those programs. Also recommending taking a look at frequently requested variances to zoning that come in to the city to see if there's a way that, hey, if these are happening frequently, we're comfortable with them, then maybe it's something we approve by right, or we make allowable by right to just expedite the process for everybody involved. And reviewing the rental registration program, it's been in place for a couple of years, but being able to evaluate that program to determine its effectiveness, and if there need to be updates to that, do so. Third goal, ensuring that all parts of the city have affordable housing. Right, as this was mentioned earlier, if people sometimes they couldn't find a housing that meets their interest at their price point in certain parts of town, and so it's a challenge. So if things that we can do to support that could include here exploring use of shared cost model, basically different ways of supporting and reducing the lot development costs, because those costs are going to get passed along, whether it's to the home buyer or the renter there. Those costs are going to get passed through. Again, prioritizing funding to projects that the city has that support our priorities, right? Locating affordable housing adjacent to transit and jobs and community services, things that we heard that residents want to see and that they want access to. If there are areas in the city, right, where we want to see more affordable housing developed, there's a potential to use the density bonus to incentivize developers there to be able to help out with those costs that they're incurring on the development side. Also here, amendments to the TOD zoning ordinance. So that can include, that could relate to an ADU that's permitted in R5 to R8 and TOD, but it also could include proactively rezoning to TOD east of 72nd Street. And then evaluating the PUR district, which is the planned unit residential district, to identify items, again, that could be defined within code for administrative approval or allowed by right to simply help out the process and expedite things for folks. So fourth goal, foster housing innovation to lower costs, right? And again, we just talked about costs earlier, how much it costs to build a new home. So what steps can we take in support of lowering costs? So part of it comes down to the city. One of the first recommendations is the city owns and has parcels of land. Obviously, right now we're not doing anything with those parcels. So recommendation is to transfer to Omaha Land Bank, where they can then get those units, those parcels out into production, do infill projects. Depending on the location of, maybe the land bank has other properties, maybe they could combine them and look at doing other projects and redevelopment. Expanding pre-approved plans that are available to folks is something that would be very helpful, and so that could be a partnership with a local organization or others, to say, hey, maybe there's a pattern book on design, and is that something that we can support and help carry forward to pre-approved plans? So again, that creates a resource for folks looking to do development, and it also then, if we build in accessible design to that or universal design elements into those pre-approved plans, we're helping spread that as well and meet a demand of an aging population and create more diversity in our product type. So we also mentioned here, on the cost side, there are new building technologies that are coming out, right? Whether it's 3D printed homes, manufactured housing across the board is more of a thing. And so what can we do as a city to support that? And it could be, there's mention in the plan around demonstration projects and you know, having a good approach, formal process to work through kind of piloting ideas. And so we can figure out those kinks and we can update our policies, our guidelines, whatever we need to do to make that work. And then also in here, if there are technology resources that we could adapt to support workflow management, say, in the review process of projects, that would be a good thing. We should continue to support redevelopment of challenging properties. Sometimes we have lots that are just hard to build on, and work with small and disadvantaged businesses to provide outreach to local contractors and developers. And so the city, through our CDBG and home programs, we're doing this informally, but it's something that we could strengthen and bolster again to bring more participants into the development and construction arena. The fifth goal, the last goal here, is advance housing stability. So the prior goals were focused really more on production of housing, increasing production overall in housing, and preservation. And so this is really more neighborhood stabilization, things that can help residents, right, stay put. So we mentioned, you know, earlier, one of the first stats that Amy shared was, you know, 55,000 households are cost burdens, right? They're spending 30% or more of their income on housing. And when you look at renters specifically, that number jumps, right, to 46%. So it's a challenge for a lot of folks. And so, you know, what are some options that we can do to support that and help those folks out? So develop a program to actively outreach to those that qualify for Nebraska's homestead exemption program could be an option. You know, expanding the number of permanent supportive housing units to help folks be able to move into a stable environment, if that allows them to get off the street or have a place to go as they're transitioning, would be very helpful. Folks we've talked to, there's a great need for that. Expand programs to assist individuals facing eviction or foreclosure, and tie this as well as the next one, rent and utility programs. So the city has, over the past year and a half or so, probably a little more, right, through COVID, had some programs through the emergency rental assistance program that support these, and so those have been found to be helpful. So how could we maybe create a more sustainable program moving forward outside those additional resources? How can we structure that and make it helpful for people? We acknowledge housing touches a lot of things, right? So especially in the built environment, and as we move forward with other plans, climate action plan, active mobility, Vision Zero, we need to align, right, those housing interests with what we're setting forth here and what ends up getting approved into those other plans. And so, you know, ideally that supports things like housing located closer to transit, right, to help lower costs for folks and give more access. And then there's also some recommendations in the plan around tenant protections. So outside of the rental registration program, there's also it mentions here eviction court procedures should be reviewed in terms of notifications to folks who were being called in. But it also, source of income protection is mentioned in the plan, as there are individuals who have a hard time finding housing, not because they don't have the income to afford the housing, but finding owners or landlords or, you know, managers who will accept that income and work with those other community partners. So next steps for us, was mentioned, you know, things are moving quick. So next week, November 8th, first reading at City Council, November 15th, second reading, and then a public hearing and vote on December 6th. And it would go to the plan that gets approved, will go to the mayor, and then we start looking at implementation, which I just call out here as realizing what is being put forth as a set of recommendations and something that we would look at integrating into our ongoing work in the planning department, but an implementation committee would be recommended to be established to, you know, identify which strategies are going to be getting implemented based off of approvals, which stakeholders need to be at the table, define those specific work plans, and jump into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Say what? Proponents. Okay.
Hi, my name is Brianna Full. My address is 1111 North 13th Street, number 311. And I am here on behalf of Spark. So I just want to start out by saying we express our full support for the Housing Affordable Action Plan as it is proposed. The plan tells a comprehensive story of the current housing crisis in Omaha and offers smart and thoughtful ideas for how to start improving the conditions that make it difficult for people and families to find affordable housing options. It is imperative that we get to work on these items as it is the foundation that we can continue to work off of moving forward into Omaha's future. We are especially supportive of the proposed implementation committee to make sure that these great ideas and recommendations come to fruition. I do have to admit I am worried about when exactly the implementation committee would be convened, because we have a really unique opportunity at the Nebraska legislature right now where there is $2.3 billion available in our surplus. So it's going to be in our rainy day fund. And it's not like we have a pretty pot of money that's sitting that the city is able to use for, say, one of the recommendations in the HAP, which is a development fund. So we have an opportunity at the Nebraska legislature, and I don't want to foil that opportunity because we didn't convene in time with the implementation committee. So I would, propose and recommend that that happens sooner rather than later. We have ideas at Spark that we have been advocating for. We've been talking to the city about. Specifically the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund. What would it look like if we were to put an infusion of dollars into that, which someone like the planning board would be able to apply for, and that would be a really nice start to a development fund in the city of Omaha, and we can continue to work about how to make that development fund sustainable in the future for the city of Omaha. But we encourage swift action on the policy recommendations presented in the plan to keep up with the pace required to meet our housing goals. This is something that definitely needs to happen sooner rather than later, and we look forward to the potential positive change that the ideas in the HAP draft could bring to our city. And again, we offer our full support and bring it to materialization. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Eva Roberts, Director of Policy and Strategy with Front Porch Investments, 1120 South 101st Street. Front Porch was launched last year to focus on innovative investments in affordable housing in our area. And over the last year, we've been proud to partner with the city in distributing ARPA funding for the development and preservation of affordable housing. I'm pleased to say just a few brief words today in support of this housing action plan. It's already creating greater clarity and shared purpose among the many stakeholders concerned with this issue. We're particularly supportive of the recommendations associated with zoning changes to promote greater density, requiring affordability in TIF projects and TOD districts, addressing source of income discrimination, increasing uptake of the homestead exemption, and dedicating funds to support housing development and provide property tax reimbursement for low-income households to prevent displacement. We've appreciated the city's genuine commitment to community engagement, which has been evident throughout the process, from the many town halls and community meetings to the thoughtful incorporation of public comment in this last round, to the creation of this multi-sector implementation plan, which will prioritize sequence and resource strategies. And so we stand ready to serve as a partner with the city in implementing these recommendations and look forward to continuing to work together to house our community and support Omaha's continued growth and shared prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Alicia Christensen. I'm representing Together at 812 South 24th Street. I echo what my colleagues have already said and really praise the hard work that went into this multifaceted plan, because the issues with housing are inextricably linked together. And as an example, I bring you some of the day-to-day challenges that the caseworkers at Together face in helping our participants find a safe place to call home. Just this year, through the end of the third quarter, so through the end of September, our case managers conducted over 400 housing searches. So they are spending a lot of their time. This is in addition to the wraparound services and referral services that they provide to our participants to help them get them stabilized and in permanent housing and have a 0% recidivism rate, which means within 2 years they have not re-entered the homelessness system. And to do so, eating up a lot of their time is this difficulty with finding housing. Permanent supportive housing is very scarce. In addition, many of our participants require braiding of funding, which means that they are using Section 8 in addition to looking for low-income housing units. So the perfect storm of these things where landlords may or may not accept Section 8, plus the scarcity of options that are within their price range, really creates a lot of difficulty for those out there helping to serve our community. And so we are really encouraged by the city's initiative in trying to combat this problem that we're facing right now and the possibility that it may grow worse in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Any other proponents?
Hello, Luke Schroer, 2522 South 33rd Street, Omaha, Nebraska. Apologize, I raced down here. I was watching it on the live stream and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to get down here. So if I'm out of breath and I don't have it any written out, then that's why. But I think it's very important that we focus on that missing middle that I heard somebody speak about earlier on trying to make a plan for people like me that do not have kids. And we see a lot of suburban expansion, but what are the options for me that I don't need a lot of space? I actually like the idea of a tiny home or a smaller area. Those options aren't really on the agendas that I see when I come and speak at City Council. Affordability is a very complex system and housing is just one part of it. If we've got neighborhoods where people can walk to work and densify a little bit, then you don't maybe necessarily have to have a car, and that helps your life be affordable in many ways. So reducing our car dependency and being able to walk to a place to work and walk to a gym and walk to get coffee, just people being on the streets makes neighborhoods safer. So our police budgets hopefully can be lowered. Density is very scary to a lot of people because they think traffic is going to be increased in their neighborhood. And that does happen with suburban sprawl because everybody's got to have a car to get out of their neighborhood to get to work and things. So residential single-family dwellings for large swaths of the city is actually very detrimental to a lot of people, and we don't think about it because it's just daily life. So I very much encourage you to think about density, especially in areas where our public transit makes sense. So what I heard, I'm sorry I didn't have the paper in front of me, so I don't know exactly what it is, but the things I was hearing in the plan sounded great to me on the way over here, and I appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Any other proponents? Okay, seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, I just have a question maybe for Amy, if I could bring Amy back up here. First of all, it's a great plan. This is very important to the city of Omaha. Great detail, great information to have, so I appreciate that. And what's that?
That's the same question.
Yeah. So, but one question I had on one of your slides, I think, Amy, is there was one that said we've lost 7,000 units for households that are earning less than $50,000 a year. How does that happen?
Well, I think there's probably a few different ways that that's happening. Actual lost unit, I mean, it's being demolished. It's being converted to a different use. So, you know, if it's on a corridor that it ends up getting turned into an insurance office rather than being that affordable unit as an older home usually. So it's actually a lost unit. It's appreciating in value would be the other piece of it. Or it's being lost and converted into potentially a more expensive unit. We've definitely seen that in a few locations across the city. So it can happen in many different ways. Okay. Appreciation being one of those pieces too.
Yeah, and appreciate it. And thank you for that clarification, because we've seen some of those happen.
Right.
Right, we've seen some of that, and so I just wanted to make sure I was clear with regards to that information. So thank you for clarifying that.
So Amy, again, is that a net loss then? Or is that offset by some
That was just looking at the number of units within those ranges that were affordable to those households in, based on census data in 2010 versus
Okay,
2020.
Not made up by a
Right.
new one, so
Yeah.
to speak. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
This may be a question for Greg. You and Hagen or Amy, you included in your goals and strategy slide just a sentence about a density bonus as an incentive for developers. Do we have a sense yet of what such a bonus could look like? Especially.
I'm actually gonna defer to Eric.
I could take this one. Eric England, Planning Department. There's a provision right now in the zoning code for a density bonus. In my time here and just my experience of the history of cases, I don't think that has been utilized. So the current section of that code obviously needs to be revised and re-looked at. There's a lot of possibilities. I don't think we have a set number in mind, but we're willing and open to look at many components of the zoning code and how it relates to density, whether it's the base districts. How do you qualify for a bonus? Maybe it could be a set percentage above what's typically allowed. We're open to exploring, but we don't have any set ideas in mind at this time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? Eric, did you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, so obviously just reiterating what Director Fanslaw and Amy and Greg touched on, hundreds and thousands of hours went into this from many members of our planning department and our consultant and for the stakeholders and for those that attended from the public to the open houses, and we are grateful for all that engagement. This is difficult. This is housing affordability, and just housing in general is a challenge that not only confronts Omaha but cities nationwide and worldwide. So it's not easy. There are many recommendations and strategies. Not everything in this document will be able to be implemented, but we don't want it to sit on our desks or shelves just collecting dust. So, staff, we're from the perspective we didn't put all this time into this effort just for naught. So we agree. We have a lot of work to do moving forward, and not just the planning department, but our partners as a whole and within City Hall. So we acknowledge that. But we are proud of the effort that went into this plan, and thank you for your support. So staff recommends approval, obviously.
Okay, do we have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Moore? Morris? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Moving on, we have one TIF agenda item this month. It's agenda item number 7. Case C3-22-285. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the Grover Street TIF redevelopment project plan, location 7016 Grover Street. And Don, you're presenting?
Yes. Good afternoon, Don Seaton, City Planning. This project is at 72nd and Grover. Proposal is a new construction of a 2-story medical office building, about 7,560 square feet. Here's the site plan. Presently, there's a curb cut off 72nd Street. That will be closed eventually when an access easement is improved to the north. 56 parking spaces on site. Picture of the building. Another rendering. This is a $2.8 million project. They're asking for $517,672 in TIF support. Complies with our master plan. We ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you, Don. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. Robert Griffith, 11440 Weston Road, here on behalf of the applicant, Dzinski Properties GE. Specifically, the medical office is a dental office. New Image Dental is owned by the applicant, which is the adjacent lot that will be zero lot line to. They plan to open a pediatric dental service. They've identified that need in the area. If you call this is the former Coco Key Romano Inn site. There's about $40,000 worth of public improvements, and a large portion of this project incorporates new high-quality dental jobs in that field, whether it be technicians or hygienists, and then, of course, pediatric dentists themselves. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Robert. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Comments, questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah. Staff recommends approval with the condition 72nd Street curb cut providing access to the site will be closed off and removed if and when the project on the adjoining parcel to the north is developed and provides improvements to the platted access easement so as to provide vehicular access into the TIF project site.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Move approval with the condition that 72nd Street curb cut providing access to the site be closed off and removed if and when the project on the adjoining parcel to the north is developed and provides improvements to the platted access easement so as to provide vehicular access into the TIF project site.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Moore? Morris? Pate? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Moving on, agenda item number 9, case C10-22-289, applicant Urban Village, request rezoning from MU to R8. Property is located within an ACI 4 area of civic importance overlay district. Location, southwest of 186th Avenue and California Street. Sorry about that. Brent, you're presenting?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brent Beller, 11440 West Center Road. On behalf of the applicant, Urban Village, with me today is Laura Tarpinian, along with Larry Smith with Avant Architects, our project architects. Mr. Pate, I'm just going to briefly touch on your question a little bit. Because this is a multifamily type project, all numbers show that increased inventory actually lowers the amount of rents and the affordability. This is not an affordable development in the sense of the definition we just saw, but here's another example of increased units in our city actually might just lower the amount of rents that people pay throughout the city. So it does have a general benefit. Because of inventory. Increased inventory actually lowers rents, affordability, that sort of thing. But this is not an affordable concept under that definition. So, okay, I'll get going. This project is interesting. I'm going to give a little bit of a historical background because it's important in the context of what's being proposed. So the lot in question is this lot right here. It's located within the Five Fountains subdivision. It is lot 151. It's always been within the Five Fountains subdivision. Initially, when this plat was recorded back in 2005, 2004, this was zoned R8. So this was a platted R8. Our request for you all today is currently this is zoned mixed use. We want to rezone it back to R8 for strictly a multi-family concept. But again, the point I'm trying to make is this was originally platted, designed, streets, everything for an R8 multi-family type development. And so to give a little context of where we are. So Dodge Street is on our south. 192nd Street is to the west. This is the Methodist Women's Hospital, obviously a large regional hospital here in our city. The residential neighborhood for Five Fountains to the east is a large mixed-use center where if you've driven down Dodge like we all have, there's banks, there's hotels, there's businesses, there's car dealerships. And as you can see, there are mixed-use lots over here abut the West Dodge Village or West Dodge Station residential subdivision, just like our lot abuts the Five Fountains. To the south is the large Avenue 1 R&R mixed-use office center. And so, that kind of gives you the context. And obviously, Dodge Street is a major commercial corridor for our city, which comes with all sorts of design guidelines, including the ACI overlay district, that sort of thing. This lot, as I mentioned, was actually originally R8. It was rezoned in 2009, 2010 to mixed use. I'd be lying if I said this is not the first time I've been in front of you all where we had an existing mixed-use development that never was developed for mixed use. This site has been on the market for 10 plus years. There was a new broker, there was a new listing, they lowered the price, and Urban Village was able to get this under contract. I actually had 2 other developer clients, when there was that price reduction, look at this lot to do the same exact thing that's going on here, just because the metrics allow from a financial feasibility for multifamily. So there's interest here, and so I want to make sure I stated that, because I think it's important as we get through everything else that's going on. So here's the original plat. This is our lot. These are all the streets. It's been there for forever. So under the existing mixed-use agreement, this is the site plan. So as you all know, when we have a mixed-use agreement, there's always a development plan that's attached as an exhibit that provides the general schematic for how this lot might be developed if it was to contain mixed use. This concept had a mixed use of office and multifamily. So multifamily has always been a component of this. There's also been a commercial component. When you read our master plan and you read our code and our mixed use development guidelines, those guidelines actually provide, and our city's policy states that we could do this project today and actually do this project with only 1 floor of commercial and 3 floors of multifamily. What we're proposing is 132 market rate apartments, 96 single family, 96 one bed, 36 2 bedroom units. We're going to have underground parking, 77 underground parkings, and 139 parking stalls on our site.
So, sorry,
Brent,
you're proposing 134 units. Today, how many units could you put on there?
Today,
Yeah,
so
as zoned today.
I was about to get there. So here is a plan that we presented to the neighborhood. We had a neighborhood meeting the first part of October. Here is a plan that has 132 units plus a commercial concept on the ground floor of these 2 buildings. And if we were to do this plan today, Mr. Morris, we actually would not need to be in front of you. We would not need to be in front of city council. We would not need to even get the neighborhood involved at all, because by right, under the mixed use agreement and our master plan requirement, our master plan, we could do this project. The point I'm trying to make, and the reason why we're not doing that, is we don't want to do the commercial component. So what, and there's other facets of this plan that we don't like, which is, this had 2 exit points. When we met with the neighborhood, they don't like the fact that there's 2 exit points on here. That's a lot. That's a traffic generator. There's 2 ins and outs on this. And generally speaking, when you talk to Public Works, we don't like having 2 entrances onto these sort of interior streets within residential neighborhoods. But in any event, this plan would have 2 of those exits. The other thing is setback lines. So you wouldn't have the 35 setback lines on on California Street. You wouldn't have the 35 setback line over here where their fountain is. You wouldn't have the 25-foot setback lines over here. That's all under the mixed use as we sit today that we could do by right without asking any permit or any approvals from you all or anybody else. But the reality is we don't want to do office. That's not what Jerry Reimer and Scott Semrad and the Urban Village team does. They self-manage all their units. They self-manage all of the apartments. They handle all the leasing. They handle the construction. They act as their own general contractor. And as we told the residents at the neighborhood meeting, we simply don't want to do commercial. That's why we're trying to rezone this. That's not to say that Urban Village hasn't ever done it. If you remember the Triangle project, which is just up the street on St. Mary's Ave in Leavenworth, that had a commercial component. We did do that. But if we don't have to do that, we would rather not. And so that's why we're really getting to the R8 zoning, getting it back to what it's supposed to do, or was originally intended to be, and go forward with that. The reality is, too, I think when I get to my point here in a minute, the mixed use is actually a more intense use than the R8 as far as traffic, as far as the entrance, as far as the intensity of building design. The thing to keep in mind when you look at projects, especially along the Dodge Street corridor, our master plan, the future land element, actually states that within a quarter mile of Dodge Street, you can have unlimited amount of multifamily units on your property, provided you comply with all the other zoning regulations. Those zoning regulations are really your impervious coverage, your building coverage. So if we were to stick with the mixed use, you look at the CC underlying base zoning, you can have the impervious coverage for the total site is 85%. We're at 58. If you look at the building coverage, it's 75%. We're at 19. My point is you can do a much more intense development under the mixed use than you can under the R8 zoning. I'm only saying that because we think the R8 is a better fit here, but if there's objections, that sort of thing, we could always do the mixed use and do the commercial, but that's not really our top priority. So when we look at this site, we met with the neighborhood, and there are a lot of good viewpoints that people brought up. One of which was traffic. So obviously, we can't dictate where traffic goes in and out. We can't tell people to turn right. We can't tell people to turn left. But one of the things that we did do is we initially had our entrance over on the west side, and I think the concern there was that might cause people to go west through the neighborhood out to 192nd Street versus having an entrance on the eastern side and have them go east and get out of the development that way. So we talked to Public Works, and Public Works was fine with that. The other thing that we did is we initially had a site plan that showed a plaza here. That plaza we actually moved over here, even though technically under the R8 you don't need a plaza, but we did move it over there. The other thing to keep in mind as far as traffic goes, when this development was done, the Developers Council had an engineer. Their engineer did a traffic analysis. Their engineer designed these streets. Our city's traffic engineer signed off on these streets. These streets can handle the load of a hospital, a single-family residential neighborhood, a school, and all the mixed use to the west of us. And the reason we know that is just the layout of them. The other thing to keep in mind is this little hatching right here, this little lot that doesn't have any bounds, that's actually a right-of-way. That's North 186th Ave right-of-way. Why is it there? Because if you go south, this is Capitol Ave, there was a proposal to put a street here having an overpass, so all this use over here could actually connect to this neighborhood at some point in time. Now, we have no one knows if that will ever be done, but this is the same concept they have on 150th and Dodge. When you have that little overpass from a commercial to the residential, my point in bringing it up is these streets were designed to handle traffic. So we kind of did that analysis. The other thing that we did with respect to traffic, because a lot of the neighbors, when we told them that the mixed use concept was more intense than a single or a multifamily residential development was, we actually engaged FHU. We all know FHU, they are a traffic engineering firm here in town. They actually did an analysis for us to look at what traffic might be with under the mixed use and what traffic might be like under our R8. And the totals were almost identical. So the total traffic counts per day under the mixed use, if you change nothing about the existing site plan, is 970.
Now, just a second, Brent, the mixed use, is that with the 132 units or the 54 units?
It's actually the original. So this is the original
54 units?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the original, not changing anything. So 970 units, or 970 traffic count versus 966, so it's a little bit less. But what's really important, because I said, look, we have kids walking to school, we have kids walking home from school. Can you get us a traffic count for the AM peak and the PM peak? So when you look at the daily in, so this is people coming into a mixed-use development, you have 73 cars in the morning. So as kids are walking to school, traffic coming into our development, that's 73 versus 14 if you have this multifamily concept. The same is true as out. So as you're leaving, or it's a little bit different, sorry, as you're going out, it's 27 versus 47, but the material difference between the two is there's 100 total traffic counts in the AM peak when kids are trying to get to school versus 61 with our multifamily. The inverse is true in the peak. So, but the only difference about the peak is that's 4:30 to 5:30, so most kids are home hopefully before 4 o'clock. But coming to a mixed use, 23, into ours, 27, going out, so as people are leaving work and kids might be walking home, that counts 63 versus 27. Again, 86 versus 74 total. So the reality is, and these are published engineering standards, the traffic impact to this development is less with R8 than it is with a mixed-use development. And so that was a big question that we got, and I just thought it was important versus us saying it, to actually engage somebody to do that analysis for us. The other big topic of conversation was the school. So there is an Elkhorn Public School right here. We reached out to Elkhorn Public Schools. I talked to the Assistant Superintendent, Ryan Lindquist, and Mr. Lindquist authorized me to be on the record. Elkhorn Public Schools is in complete support of this project. He stated that they welcome our kids, they welcome our development, and they actually had planned for this to be a multifamily development in the future. Their estimates had 15 to 20% of our residents would go to this school. And over the course of all grades, that'd be an increase of about 20 kids. But then Mr. Reimer and the Urban Village team actually did their own analysis. Less than 5% of all the residents at their apartments are actually kids. So if there was a concern about overcrowding, number one, Elkhorn Public Schools sees no concern with it. And the reality is less than 5% of our residents might be children. So we did that. We reached out to them, and that was the results. I already talked about the entrance, how we shifted that to hopefully get folks moving east through the mixed use center. The other thing that folks brought up was just this location of this lot in this particular subdivision and how it doesn't fit, and this is not something that we ever see in the city of Omaha. So I just quickly got on Dogis and I found a number of developments in and around Dodge and other commercial corridors where this same concept is done, and it has been done many, many times successfully. First and foremost, 150th and Dodge. Here are the Wycliffe apartments. They've been there for 20 or 30 years now, and as you can see, they all use single-family residential streets to access Dodge Street. Here's another one. West Maple Street, this is 144th. This is a multifamily development. They're using single-family home streets to access the major arterial corridors. Here's another one that was just done actually before you all a couple months ago. This is 168th. Here's a multifamily lot that's set for 20, 30 years. And here they're going to use single-family residential streets to access the major commercial corridors. Here's another one on 168th and Harrison, using single-family residential streets. You get the point. Here's another one. My point in this is this has been done many, many times successfully, and these neighborhoods are intact. They're doing great, and it creates a vibrant, social, economic, diverse neighborhood. Parking. So we heard a lot from the residents that there are concerns about parking. As we understand, there are ball games at this field, Elkhorn Public Schools ground, in the summer. There are parking issues where people are parking on California Street. They're parking on North 186th Avenue. This wasn't a popular answer, but the reality is we can't control parking. We have nothing to do with parking. But what I can say is our absolute goal and our intent to self-park all of our residents on our property. This is a $35 million investment for the Urban Village development team. When you have a high-end product like that, you better provide parking, because otherwise your rents don't equate with the amenities that people have. So with the underground parking and the on-street or on our on-site parking, we will have plenty of parking spaces for our residents. And the other reality is they can petition their SID, who can contact the county to put no parking signs anywhere they want. That's up to them to do that, and we're supportive of that. We don't see any issues with that. We also, by the way, don't see any issues with striping any crosswalks. Elkhorn Public Schools asked if we were supportive of that. Of course we are. We want a safe neighborhood as well. We want our residents to be just as safe as everyone that lives there today. The other thing is valuation. So this is an SID. Property taxes are always an issue. We brought up the fact that this, on a conservative level, is a $30 million valuation to their SID. That equates per $100,000, $138 of savings. So if you have a $600,000 house, that's roughly about $830 a year that you will save on your property taxes when we're fully valued. So from the standpoint of the SID, this is good for them. This lowers people's property taxes. Lastly, and I'm kind of glad that the HAP conversation was just had, we had a lot of questions about this is going to be Section 8 or could it be Section 8, and for whatever reason that was important. This is not Section 8. This is market rate. We don't do Section 8. We've never been qualified under the Nebraska QAP to do low-income housing tax credit deals, but that's not what this is. So what this is a market rate, a use that is compatible for what our master plan requires. It's not as dense as what you could get under an existing mixed use. And frankly, I think we're being a little bit conservative on the amount of units and anything else that we're doing here in light of where we're located along the Dodge Street corridor. So I'll sit down. I'm sure there's going to be some questions, and after that, I'm happy to respond to them. But we appreciate your consideration, and this obviously comes to you with the recommendation or approval from the planning department as well.
Right, I have one quick question.
Sure.
When you talked to the Elkhorn School, I think one of the letters mentioned that they had heard concern from Methodist Women's Hospital. Have you heard from them, or has there been any talk with them?
No. So what's really interesting is, so we had a neighborhood meeting on October 3rd. And my point in doing that was I wanted to vet any issues and have anybody call us, no matter what, well ahead of when we're sitting in front of you today. I've done enough of these to know that it's always good practice to vet any issues before you get to planning board. October 3rd, we received 0 calls. We had 0 calls from any residents. We had 0 calls to Urban Village. We had 0 calls from Nephis. No one. In fact, the only one that actually called me was Elkhorn Public Schools to show their support for our project. So no one's called us.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, are there any opponents? We have quite a bit of correspondence with opponents on this project. How many, just a show of hands, how many of you are going to speak today? If you want to come down and take a place up front, that'll help.
He asked how many of you plan to speak. Someone couldn't hear in the back.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, come on down and have a seat in the front. That'll help speed things up, so. And then we need your name and address, please. Thank you.
Yep. My name's Nicole Jillick. I'm an attorney with Abrahams, Caslow, and Castman. Address is 8712 West Dodge Road, Suite 300, Omaha, Nebraska, 68114. I represent the Five Fountains Homeowners Association Board, and I'm speaking on behalf of the HOA Board today. Wanted to bring up a few of our concerns that we've had. My clients would acknowledge that there was a neighborhood meeting. Many of them participated in that meeting, and some of the concerns that were expressed in that meeting have been discussed by Mr. Beller ahead of me. The board represents 140 homeowners in the Five Fountain neighborhood. Number one, my client is utmost concerned about the density use of the prospective use on this particular unit. I know that the proposal before you today from Urban Village is anticipating 134 units. However, if this property is rezoned to R8, there's actually a potential that the development that actually takes place on this property could exceed that density. I think even Mr. Beller said that the use of 134 units is conservative. One of the board members has even estimated that given what's possible under a R8 zoning, there could be more than 300 units placed on this particular property. So first and foremost, my clients are concerned about the density use of this particular property if in fact it is zoned as R8. Just because they're asking that a 134 unit development be done on this property doesn't mean at a later date, once this zoning is approved, that they don't change their development plans. Number two, my clients are concerned about traffic. As Mr. Beller noted, the method of ingress and egress for this particular property is primarily through the Five Fountains neighborhood. Anyone traveling to or from this property would have to use residential streets, including 189th Street, 186th Avenue, and California Street, as well as HWS Cleveland Boulevard to access this particular property. My clients, as the Homeowners Association, are also concerned about the burden on community spaces. This particular development does have a large amount of community space. The community space is a park. It's currently owned by the SID. However, the Homeowners Association pays for a large majority of the upkeep and maintenance of that park. The Homeowners Association pays for the amenities, including the walking trails, the maintenance of the water features and the fountains located thereon, the snow removal, the trash removal, mowing, and other amenities. If the higher density use put on this particular property would cause more impact to my client, the Homeowners Association, just because more people residing in that area are going to use this public amenity and cause additional expense for the Homeowners Association. So while the residents of this prospective development would potentially use this property, they're also not paying for the burden of that increased use. The burden of the increased use would be on my client, the Homeowners Association. My clients, in addition to the dense use of a R8 zoning, are also concerned about the height of a building that could be built on this. Right now, they're planning a 4-story building, but just because they're planning a 4-story building doesn't mean that their plans couldn't change at a later date and still be within what's allowed on R8 zoning. I believe R8 zoning allows up to 150 feet. I believe that the application does ask that the area of civic importance be continued. My clients are in agreement of that, and that's something very important at that. Nothing with respect to that designation changes, and so I'd like to yield my time, the remainder of my time, unless there are any questions for me, to Jim Marriott, who is on the board of the Homeowners Association.
Nicole, just a
Yes.
question for you on the point that Mr. Beller brought up is the way it's currently zoned is mixed use. They could proceed if they wanted to with something very similar to that, but just incorporate some commercial in there. So what
Understood.
is your client's opinion on that perspective?
Because one of their primary concerns is the impact on the amenities in the area and the fact that they pay for those amenities, the Homeowners Association actually pays for those amenities. They believe that there's a distinction between the number of residents and users of that space versus full-time residents. And so one of our positions would be that the fewer number of full-time residents of that particular space would decrease our burden. So the thought of the Homeowners Association board is that the commercial component or commercial users of that space won't have the same impact on the use of those amenities.
But it would increase, according to the chart that Mr. Beller provided, traffic counts.
And I'm not privy to that information and don't have any specific numbers on traffic counts.
Okay.
So, but I guess, just to distinguish, commercial users versus residential users.
Sure. Thank you.
So they think that the commercial users would not use the public spaces? Is that what they're saying?
Not to say that they wouldn't, but we think that the impact would be different. We believe that it's their opinion that the residential users would have a greater impact on those amenities than the commercial users. Any other questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Marriott. I live at 18687 Webster Circle in Five Fountains. Here today on behalf of a number of folks, the HOA Board of Directors, as well as residents from Five Fountains, Silverleaf Estates, the residences at West Dodge Station, and a number of parents from the West Dodge Station Elementary School. And Nicole kind of covered broadly what our concerns are regarding safety, traffic, pollution, property values. And I want to say kind of off the front here from the get-go that we're not opposed to any development going in here. We always knew, and we made purchase decisions under the assumption that a development would go into this space someday. What we are opposed to, however, is changing the zoning to allow for R8, which would result in an incremental roughly 80 units going into the space. So to add to the context that he provided earlier, yes, it was originally zoned as R8 very early on. As a result of that, though, we saw that lots were selling very, very slowly, likely partly to that. In fact, at some point along the way, the SID had to file bankruptcy because lots were not selling quickly enough. Once zoning was changed to allow for mixed use, lots did begin to sell, the neighborhood did begin to fill in, and I think folks viewed that generally a bit more favorably than they viewed the R8 zoning. So in terms of safety, this is a bit unique in that we feel that this higher density and increased number of units will impact safety just because of the very, very close proximity to bodies of water. This building would be mere feet from a large pond with a fountain in it, which draws kids to play in and around and folks to mingle there. And I think the intent when these were first developed was that it would not support that level of density, that number of folks in and around those water features. Also, it'll have an impact to safety as a result of increased traffic. Surely we've all driven by this area, and driving east on California Street, kind of working your way up the hill, it does become really challenging in terms of cars that are parked on the street, cars that are there for baseball games, residents coming and going, and kids crossing the street during school. So adding again, an incremental roughly 80 units would just compound that effect and make it that much more dangerous for folks getting to and from school, getting into and out of the neighborhood, et cetera. Regarding multifamily properties, I'm sure you guys hear all the time concerns regarding safety and regarding traffic and regarding property value impacts. So I don't want to tell you things that you've already heard over and over, but I do want you to consider how unique this is relative to other multifamily developments that have gone in West Omaha. I think this would be very unique because I don't believe there are any R8 properties like this in West Omaha west of roughly 156th Street. And it makes it that much more unique that there are so limited options for ingress and egress. A resident in this building would need to travel about a half a mile to make it either to 180th Street or 192nd Street. And all of that would be done through small, relatively congested streets. And so with that, I'll pass. There are a number of folks here who I think will share similar concerns. Yes?
Yeah, just a couple questions for you. I want to make sure I understood you. So you said that, I think I heard you say that you think that the original zoning of R8 was an impediment to the lots selling in this?
I think that it was, yes.
And then the SID had to file bankruptcy?
It did.
What year did they file bankruptcy?
I wish I had that information in front of me. It might have been 2006-ish.
So it was still zoned R8?
It was early on.
It was early on in that. So the other question was, could it have been due to the price of the lots?
Perhaps, and certainly the timing corresponds with the economic slowdown that took place right around then. Yeah. But I do think the close proximity to R8 zoning had an impact on the speed with which the lots were sold.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jim?
Thank you. And in summary, one more time, all we're asking is to honor the original neighborhood agreement that was signed off by the city, because again, that's what everyone made purchasing decisions based on, is the fact that we knew roughly what was going to be going into this space, and to change it now will have a pretty impactful financial consequence on all those who made those decisions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other opponents?
Yeah, Rich Jareski, 189 North HWS Cleveland Boulevard, Five Fountains. Obviously a resident, and I'm also on the Five Fountain board. I attended the meeting for the residents on October 3rd and took a look at the plans that they were presenting. They did present a plan where they had utilized the mixed use. They said they could develop under the current mixed use agreement, and it had, I think, 1 level of office commercial and 3 levels of residential above that. If you look at how they had those laid out on their drawings, that equaled about 96 apartments, so I don't know where they were coming up with the 132. The 132 is on an R8 rezoning request. They have residential apartments all the way down. I also took a look at our code book, and on an R6 lot, if you just took the mixed use out of it and made it R6 zoning, they'd only be allowed 86 units on that because of the amount of square feet. Now, I don't understand the within a quarter mile of Dodge. I don't understand that if there's a change for that. But on the current code, you got to have 2,000 square foot per apartment unit of space. So there's through almost 4 acres, that equates to only 86 apartments would be allowed in that building. I think I want to compliment the city on the use of R8 in the past. I've looked at the map. It looks like most of all R8 is in the highly urban, more urban areas of the city, which the standard calls out for. And I believe about 145th is the last R8 zoning along Dodge that I've seen. There are several apartment complexes along Dodge that are zoned R6. A couple new ones have gone in as just R6 zoning. So it seems like an R6 zoning is adequate for building apartment structures and getting rent, or these structures wouldn't be rented. So I think continue with the mixed use, either, you know, with some commercial, but keep the R6 restriction for the residential apartment units is key to the residents of Five Fountains.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Any other opponents?
My name's John Finicaro. I live at 18722 North HWS Cleveland Boulevard, and I've lived in the Five Fountains subdivision for close to 13 years with my wife. Most of what I was going to say has been said, so I don't want to be redundant, but I would throw this out there. There's currently, I believe, 150 single residences in the area. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's been kept up well through a lot of the efforts of the board and the people that are in the area. Adding 132 other residences increases the residential count instantly by about 85%. Now, I can't think of any other neighborhood. There's many nice neighborhoods in this town. It's a compliment to the city what the board has done to preserve and protect the neighborhoods that we have, including downtown commercial areas. But I can't think of any other, pick them, Dundee, Linden Estates, Old Harvey Oaks, whatever you want to pick. Take those and increase the residential count by 85% overnight, and it's guaranteed it's going to have a significant impact on those areas. I'll promise you that. Every single residential street in Five Fountains is 1 lane each way, not 2 lanes. To get 132 apartments, a complex of 132 in place there without an outlet directly to a main road like Dodge Street, every single one of those, there could be up to 200 cars estimated. If you have 132 residences, most of them would probably have 2 people living there, 2 cars. Let's just call it 200 to be conservative. You'll have 200 people going to work every morning and coming back, driving through the residential area. Not that that's a bad thing, but you have kids right now at this time of day, between 2:45 and 3 o'clock, they're doubled up parking across the street on the empty lot at West Dodge Station with parents picking up their kids. And I have no problem with that. God love the kids and I love the school there. But to imply that there will be no impact in this residential area with that kind of a head count is false. And as Jim had mentioned before, we're not opposed to people, to progress, to what it was originally zoned for. But to increase it that much is going to have a severe impact on the quality of the neighborhood. And my understanding of zoning laws is that part of it is to protect the neighborhoods, the quality, and those people that have invested in the areas to keep the quality up in those spots. So I guess I would just urge that it stays at mixed use, which my belief is that it would add 54 apartments maximum, as opposed to the 132, which could change to God knows what in the future.
But quick question for you, John. So you mentioned the number of people that live in your subdivision. I think you said 150?
Yes.
Those are residences, right?
Correct.
Are most of those residences families?
Yes.
That have children as well? So there's multiple people in the
You bet.
households as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many have families, but a lot of them.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm just trying to understand your math
No.
a little. So the 85% is not on number of people necessarily, but number of units, household units, basically.
Yes,
Not
it might be comparable to, say, number of adults, grown adults. You know, I don't,
Right, yeah.
not that I have a problem with adults versus kids, but kids I don't see as, but yes, you're correct. That's, I wasn't trying to imply it was a population thing. Maybe I'm looking more at vehicles and parking on the street, nighttime activities that you have in apartment complexes.
Is Five Fountains completely full?
I believe it is.
Is it all built
Is there
out?
anything open in
They're all sold. There's 2 vacant lots.
Two vacant lots, I guess.
John, the 132 units that's proposed at this point, you do understand if you went back to that commercial use, that we don't know how many cars there would be working in that office complex. And so there could be more traffic coming in the morning when people are going to work and leaving at 5 when the kids are typically gone, but that could be even more. So I know we're going to have traffic from either issue that's a concern to you guys. Is that correct?
My belief or my opinion is I'd rather have commercial, because most commercial is 8 to 5, and then it's done at 5, 5:30, whatever. If you have more persons and it involves nighttime activity, I'm not implying party central, but you got to think about that kind of thing. a business district, it's gonna shut down 5, 6 o'clock, whatever it is. Normal hours, usually it's daylight. A whole lot of other things happen in this world after the sun goes down. And especially when there's a lot more people there, residential versus commercial. I don't see any problem with commercial, to be honest with you. I don't find commercial areas personally risky or damaging or partiers or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. They close down at a reasonable hour. So yes, the actual traffic, I have serious doubts about the traffic count. I don't know where this study came from, no offense, but I've lived there 13 years. I walk with my wife in that neighborhood every day except when weather's bad. And I can tell you, you get 132 apartments in there, I'd rather have the commercial any day.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Any other opponents?
Luke Schroer, 2522 South 33rd Street. I am not in that neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination, but it kind of hurts my heart to see that we've done this to ourselves. All the maps that were up there were spaghetti streets, cul-de-sacs, and that is a thing that you see more as you get out west. We used to build cities with neighborhoods. I live in Hanscom Park, where I can walk to get my hair cut literally a block away. And the number one thing that everybody brought up today was traffic, and we did it to ourselves. Where is the public transportation feasible at all in that neighborhood? It's not. Rezoning this to all residential versus mixed use, with mixed use, hopefully people that live above or near that can walk to work, and that's taking cars off of the road. We need to be thinking in 2022 and not back in 1960, 70, 80, 90, what we've been doing for decades. It is not working. And the residents don't want increased traffic because their kids are walking to school. But I challenge you to see how many kids are actually walking to school nowadays, now that we have suburban sprawl, versus back in the day when our neighborhoods were tighter and you could do a lot more walking trips and there was people out monitoring because they were just on the street. Nowadays, people jump in a car and nobody's watching out for their neighbors. There is some walking that happens in neighborhoods, yes, absolutely. But just having those cafes that you have people sitting outside and monitoring a neighborhood helps reduce crime. But we've made this problem for ourselves, and I feel bad for you because some of the arguments against it, I was like, well, we want people in those outdoor spaces by the pond and stuff. We're losing that in today's environment. We don't have those outdoor spaces, and we're chasing people into our little tiny single-family dwellings and not encouraging kids to walk to school because of how we're zoning. So mixed use is an answer to that. It will take vehicles off the road, hopefully. Find a job down at the base of your building is going to help. So I would encourage you to keep mixed use zoning. I think it is an answer for our problems, but the suburban sprawl is going to be a problem that you guys have to solve. And it's a problem that we've made for ourselves, and that is my 2 cents, so we don't get too long. So thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Any other opponents?
Hi, my name is Patty Velasquez. I live on California Street, 18664 California. So I'm reiterating about the traffic because I live on that street. And when my grandkids come over, they want to play in the front yard or in the backyard. But, you know, if we want to encourage families to live on that street, we also want to be careful that they're safe. And I don't understand the traffic study either. I tried to figure out some numbers myself, and it's difficult because we have influxes of times when our street is being used a lot. We have nurses and doctors that use California Street to come in, as well as ambulances going to the Women's Hospital ER. So, you know, that can be at any time of day or night. We have the sports events that happen, and we love that the kids have a place to play ball, but there is no parking lot for their parents to park at, so they park in front of our houses. And sometimes they park in front of our driveways, which is inconsiderate, but it happens. So when the study was done, I guess my question is, did that take those events into account. So it's a very, fluctuating times of day that things are being used on our streets. But so that's, again, I just question that study, as others have too. I see how many people in our complex, in our Five Fountains, walk because they walk right past my house. And we walk, the basic trail is kind of going around the fountain and down the trails and then up on Cleveland Boulevard. And so a lot of people are very much regular in their walking their dogs, taking their kids out for walks and that sort of thing. So people use it. And so they use it for cars and they use it for, foot traffic. One of the things that I question, and I don't know how this exactly works this is my first time of being here, but when the gentleman, Mr. Beller, said that they were going to change the entrance and exit for how to get in and out of the apartments, I don't recall him saying where it was going to be. And I am interested in knowing that because it could be right in front of my house. And if that's a possibility, then I would like to know that because I might want to sell my house before they build, because headlights are going to be coming in and out of my home, and my privacy, I guess, is going to be inhibited. So that would be one of my questions on this too. The other thing was that when I'm wondering if it could be used as and I don't believe that this was at the initial meeting. I had COVID, I couldn't go to that, or I would have, but if it was considered a 55 age and older apartment complex, there would be less traffic potentially. That wasn't, as far as the people I've asked from Five Fountains, that wasn't mentioned. But if that's a possibility, then it could be lower numbers of vehicles on the streets. If you're 55 and older, you're probably not going to be driving back to work so much, back and forth. So those are a couple of my questions.
Hey, Patty, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You brought up the cars that are parked in the street for sporting events
Mhm.
there. And we saw video of the cars that were parked in the street. Does the school not allow you to park in their lot? Or is it overflow?
Yeah,
'Cause I think
well,
the school should have adequate parking, I would think, for.
I don't know the answer to that specific question. I know that when my own grandchildren come over, we're not allowed to play on the school playground.
It's public property, so you should be able to.
They have shooed us off and said that we are not allowed to. So there's a potential that they're not allowed to park in the parking lot. I don't know if. So it's a smaller parking lot, so it's potentially overflow. But there is no designated parking. I mean, there is that, I think you called it an egress right away. So, a lot of people will just park up on the grass, and they do that, but then other people who don't have an SUV, or it's just inconvenient to get their little kids out, they'll park in front of our houses. So,
Okay, I'm curious.
Thank you, Patty.
thank you.
Thanks.
Any other opponents wishing to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I'm going to close the public hearing. Brent, I want you to come back up. I do have a question for you.
Okay, Brent Beller, 11440 West Center Road.
Well, I got a lot of questions for you, but the one I want to make, I was under the impression that the mixed use you could build today is limited to the commercial on the main floor and 54 units.
No, so.
That was my understanding.
and-
Just a second. I'm going to ask Eric about that. Eric, am I wrong in that understanding, or where are we at?
Yes, the existing mixed-use development agreement from February 22nd, 2010 has 2 buildings. Each building, 2 floors of office. There's underground parking, 2 floors of apartments. in the calculation, it looks like it was approximately 52,000 of office, commercial, and then 54 units. I can't speak for Brent. Perhaps he's discussing conversations with staff about possible minor amendments or major amendments leading up to it. So, I don't want to put words in Brent. That was kind of the takeaway that I took away from it. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm still not certain. I guess, let me ask Dave Fanslau. Upstairs in the pre-meeting, Dave, I asked you about this, and I thought you said what has been proposed in the 54 units, that's what is in the mixed-use agreement for that property.
Dave Fanslau, City Planning Director.
Maybe I misunderstood you. I'm just trying to get a clarification.
Yeah, so Dave Fanslau, City Planning Director. I don't remember the specific number. I think what our conversation was, there's 2 floors of office, 2 floors of residential, which is equal, right? So you do 1 to 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3. So I wasn't aware of the 50. When we talked earlier today, I wasn't aware of the exact unit count that was in the approved plan, the 2010, as Eric referred to.
Okay, I thought I had asked you that.
It says in the proposal that it's 54 units.
Okay, so, okay,
Yeah.
I have the page here. Brent, is it 54 in the one building, 28 in the second?
I think it's 54 total, I think, if I'm.
Yeah, it's a little
under the
unclear because it
exist-
calls out certain buildings, phase 1, phase 2.
Correct, and then it only has 1 floor, and there's 4 floors, there's 3 and 4. But that plan did reference the development plan that was in the existing mixed-use agreement called for a minimum of 50% of this property being multifamily, and it was proposed under that plan. Remember, plans are plans, 54 units. It also said that there'll be a commercial component of those buildings, and that commercial component in the plan was referenced as 2 floors of commercial. My point is that if you keep reading that subsection, it states you can actually do less commercial provided that you do more multifamily within that same building.
Our policy is equal to or more.
Okay, so
if you have 1 floor commercial, you could do 3 floors or 4 floors or 5 floors, whatever was approved.
I just want to make, so Brent is correct on, you could go to 132 apartment units.
On those 3 floors.
On those 3 floors.
Well, so here's what the agreement states specifically. Approximately 50,000 square feet, 50% of the site area shall be reserved for office commercial uses only. If a project provides for at least 1 multi-story, multi-use building, a lower percentage of office uses may be allowed.
Okay.
So I guess I'll get to my commentary later.
Okay. Another question Nicole brought up. Right now, you're looking at, is it 132? I thought it was 132 units, but 132.
It's 132.
That's right now. Is there a possibility your plans are going to change on this?
As we sit today in front of this board and these residents, we don't have any intents to do more than 132 units. And all we've ever tried to convey is somebody else, if it's not us, they could come in and do more. That's what's the future land use element of our master plan states. It's unlimited. We're not doing that. Within a quarter mile of Dodge Street, Maple, not Pacific, Center Street. I mean, that's just, those are the rules. Developers and myself, we live by those.
Yeah. Okay, there was a number of questions for you. I hope you're keeping notes.
I'll try. Yeah, I'll try. I'll start with Patty because those are fresh in my mind. Patty, to answer your question, and those are legit questions I want to make sure we're clear on. So we actually moved the entrance over here. So on this eastern side, so that most folks will exit and we presume go east into the mixed use. The other thing that's important to remember, under the ACI, there is a buffer that will be in the front here to control traffic lights shining in to the homes on the north side here. That's an ACI requirement. We have to do that. So hopefully that answers Patty's questions. The other one, Mr. Marriott had mentioned the vacant lot. You're right. The bankruptcy happened before these were rezoned. It was a tough time. We know that, that's all public record. The reality is our development benefits their SID. It is not a cost on them. We're actually lowering their property taxes, and their valuations might go up by increased valuation of this project. People don't want to hear that, but that's just the reality of this particular project. The density, we've talked about that a lot. We're committed to do 132 units. We could do that under the mixed use, or we could, where we have a commercial floor and 3 floors of a multifamily above, and just do 1-bedroom units, and we can get 132 of them up there. We don't want to do that because we simply don't want to do the commercial. Not to mention, because I'll talk about traffic. I'm not a traffic engineer. These numbers aren't made up. These are based on the International Traffic Engineers standards. There's codes for how they do all this. I'm certain this makes a lot of sense to Mr. Haas, and these are the standards that he lives by. But these are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. The existing use, if we were to change nothing, the traffic will be more at the time periods that everyone is concerned about under the existing mixed use versus the R8.
That was the information we had in our pre-meeting from Ryan
And
Haas.
that's just the reality. And I know people, I do this every day, so we know that commercial is a much more intense use. This, under to the comment about restaurants, you can't do this under the mixed use agreement. You can't have restaurants here. That would be a major amendment. That would be before you too. Because we're keeping these uses the same, commercial, multifamily, that's why we're living in the world we're living in the sense that we can do what we need to do under the existing mixed use. The park. So we're going to pay property taxes just like everybody else. So it's a public park. We have the right, our residents have the right to go there. The fountains, as I understand, is an association expense. I don't know if those are public or if those are private. If those are a private amenity for the residents of 5 Points, number one, we're technically in that subdivision, this lot. Whoever's here has the right to do that. But if they can restrict access to only single family, then they should do that. Put signage up. We represent plenty of SIDs and HOAs in our city, and we do that. We put signage up for private improvement. So if they are truly private, put signs up, and we will instruct our residents to not go in the fountains, swim in the fountains, walk on the trails. But if they're public, anybody can go there. Whether they live in our subdivision or down in Dundee, they can go walk the trails if they're public. The traffic we've talked about. I mean, this was all master planned many years ago by engineers that signed off on the traffic from the hospital, having an overpass here and traffic coming in here. I am sensitive. I have children myself. I live down in the Midtown area, and we have apartments all over. We have apartments that are market rate. We have apartments that are Section 8, and we do just fine. So this is part of our city. It works in Dundee. It works in Benson. It works in South Omaha. It works in La Vista. It's working on new plats that I'm putting in Gretna. It's going to work here. And I understand it's different, and people didn't think this would happen, but this lot is what this was here for. And I hope that we can just be accepting that Urban Village is a top-notch developer. They are an owner. They are an operator. They operate as their own general contractor. They manage all their own properties. They are homebred. They live in Omaha. They have a track record. If you go look at the landlord registry, look at how many complaints are against them. Any? They operate a first-class operations. They're dumping $35 million into this lot. The last thing that they want to do is for it to go to crap or have their tenants destroy it or affect their neighbors. They want to be a good neighbor.
Hey, Brent. Patty had asked, is this an age of 55 and over complex?
It's not.
And then do you happen to know the rents on what a one-story and a...
Yep.
I'm sorry, one bedroom, 2-bedroom are?
This is not age, but here is the play if you're a developer. You have a regional hospital facility right here. Nurses coming to Omaha that want to work here, and there's a nursing shortage, we want them to live there. We want them to walk to work. If you're a mechanic and you live over and you work in this mixed-use development, or if you're a banker, if you work for the hotel, we want you to walk from our development over here. If you're going to go work in the plethora of office buildings that are going to be south of Dodge over here, we want you to ride a bike or walk over there. That's what this is for. What was your second question? Sorry. Rents. Oh, 1 bedrooms are about $1,600. 2 bedrooms would be that $2,000 to $2,100. And the sizes of those are 800 to 1,600 square feet.
Back to the traffic study. I think as John Finicaro brought up, the point of commercial, does your traffic study take into effect after hours? Once, commercial is closed?
Yep.
Is that in your traffic study?
That's the PM peak times that we talked about. So that's that 4:30 to 5:30.
Okay. but
Because
then
those,
after that,
it's less.
versus an apartment and closed commercial.
So they, under the ITE standards, they pick the highest morning use time periods and they pick the highest use PM time periods. And that's where they got the the 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the AM and 4:30 to 5:30. Those are peak times as far as ITE standards go.
But after those peak times,
They're
commercial,
lower.
Yeah, it's gonna be down to nothing.
Right.
Yeah, versus more apartments.
But the point is both of those metrics, under mixed use or multifamily, they're going to be lower than the
Yeah,
peaks.
I understand. Okay. Any other questions for Brent? I think you covered everything I was wanting you to cover. Oh, the height of the building.
60 feet.
60 feet. Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Eric. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously there's been a lot of conversations about density and master plan, so I won't belabor many of those, except for the proposed residential use type is master plan compliant. As was previously mentioned, the master plan does allow for unlimited amount of units within a quarter mile of 4 of our major arterials, which are all state highways. So that'd be West Dodge Road, West Maple Road, West Center Road, and 204th Street. So that means we don't limit the amount of units adjacent to that corridor as long as they are compliant with all the applicable zoning code regulations. So this plan would have to comply with parking, landscaping provisions, setbacks, regulations of that type. I don't know if there's any further questions on the original mixed-use agreement. Sorry, I got thrown off a little bit earlier. I saw a parking requirement. There are 54 total units that are prescribed in the 2010 agreement. I got verification from some of my staff upstairs, and there is a page that lays out what those are, number of units. So, I guess the agreement also doesn't specify, as currently developed, a specific office user. It does say office and commercial uses. You could have restaurants, you could have bars, you could have all sorts of different types, counseling services that could go into those 2 levels of office commercial as it sits today. Some of those could even increase the amount of traffic that would come and go. We do have Public Works here that can speak to traffic counts. But yes, generally with the proposed use of multifamily, you do see a spreading out. We've talked about this because we have had a lot of apartment projects, as you know. I know a couple of months ago we had, I think it was 1,400 units throughout different sites in the city that was on one planning board agenda. With the earlier conversations about the Housing Affordability Action Plan, obviously housing is getting more expensive. You are seeing a drop off of some of those starter homes, and you are seeing people going into apartments. And so, yes, we have had a lot of apartment projects throughout all portions of the city. And so this falls right in line with what we are seeing. But specifically for traffic, we have Ryan from Public Works here if you do have questions on that. Density, like I said, it's master plan compliant, and we view it as being an appropriate use for the site. I guess I could touch a little bit on, just because I am familiar a little bit with the baseball games. My children have played some games there, so yes, it does get busy. The cars that were parking on this site on the grass should not have been. That is not compliant with the code. So, the on-street parking is appropriate. I would encourage neighbors to coordinate with the school district. I don't think the school parking lots are utilized heavily during the baseball games because it's on the opposite end of where the fields are. I believe that Elkhorn Public Schools could coordinate with the league that is utilizing those fields to try to coordinate and, you know, ask for assistance. But that being said, on-street parking is permitted, you know, as long as they're not parking in areas with no parking signs. So I will leave it at that, unless you have further questions. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. Before I ask for a motion, I just was gonna make a comment. I don't know who said it, might have been Jim or Rich. Somebody said, just to honor the original agreement. The original agreement was R8, then it changed. And I know Five Fountains sat there kind of dormant for quite a while. Don't know what all the factors were at that point. But then it did take off, and that agreement was that piece of ground was gonna be mixed use. People have known what's gonna go in there and that as a mixed use, and that's when they started buying. Like I said, there could have been a lot of other factors, but whoever said you need to honor the original agreement, I guess that kind of struck a chord with me. That was just my comment.
Could I make one more statement? I do want to clarify. It is only zoned mixed use because of the true mixed use buildings that were proposed and approved. And I know that's what the neighbors would like to see developed. But I do want to make that clarification because this does qualify in the area of the quarter-mile gap of non-office commercial. But as David mentioned, I think previously, we do allow true mixed use buildings to be allowed when the amount of residential is at least equal, if not more than the amount of office commercial. So,
okay. Thank you, Eric.
I'd like to make a comment too about, you have to realize that when this whole area of Five Fountains was developed, it was, as everybody acknowledges, it was considered to be an R8 lot. And so all the street and infrastructure was designed around that, which means that it can carry whatever kind of traffic is necessary to be carried. What has happened in the interim is things slowed down and they did not develop out. So you've all been living there with a system of underutilized streets, but that's what you become accustomed to and you think that's normal. But those streets will handle a lot more than what you understand. And the traffic engineers are the ones that are the experts and understand that, how much load there is on a given street based on the population that it serves. And so and we see this all over the city when we have an area that develops early and then we've got dead-end streets going to nowhere into a cornfield that sits there for 20 or 30 years. And then all of a sudden somebody comes in and decides to develop that. Nobody wants that street to connect. Well, it's designed to connect. It has to connect. And this is a similar situation to that, where the design that's there is adequate for what this use is. This is, as has been demonstrated, it's actually a somewhat lower usage than what could actually go there.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the rezoning from MU to R8 district.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Moore? Yes. Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
No.
Approved 5-1.
Okay, thank you all for coming down.
Thank you all.
Moving on, agenda item number 11. This was on consent. It was taken off. It's case C10-22-291. Applicant Anyade Tamaru, hope I said that correctly again, request rezoning from R435 to R5, location 4206 Ohio Street. And to remind everybody, this was on for layover. May we hear from the applicant, please?
So I'm representing the applicant. My name is Melisha Potter, I'm property manager with NP Dodge, 8601 West Dodge Road. And my client is wanting to convert her single family home to a duplex and is needing to change the zoning to do so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, so, Ms. Potter, I'm not sure if you have the staff recommendation report or if your client has that. We recommended layover just for some clarification and improved site plans. What's proposed is a duplex, sort of a front, back-end unit from the existing single-family home. We had some concerns just because the site plan was not code compliant. I guess specifically, how will parking be addressed is one of the first and primary concerns about staff. You know, is it feasible? Where would that parking be located? Just some more details and probably a better two-scale site plan. So we recognize the need for housing, and of course, we've talked about that all meeting and every meeting. So, you know, R5 zoning is master plan compliant, but how realistic is it, and where would the parking be? Because with adding a second unit, you do have increased parking requirements. So that was one of our concerns and why we are recommending layover. So I guess I would open it up, Ms. Potter, if you would like to speak.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't, you know, present a plan as you sit here today, so I don't think our layover change or recommendation would change, but I'm willing to hear you out if you have any
Since Eric
commentary.
called you up, you're welcome to speak. Please give your name and address again.
Oh, okay. Melisha Potter, 8601 West Dodge Road. I do have this. I don't know if it'll show up on my thing. This is just a Google Maps. Google Maps of the back of the house. There is an alley here that they could put like a parking pad back in the back of the house to suffice for the parking arrangements.
Okay.
So you just have to tighten it up a little bit. Work with the city, and you know, they might be able to help you with you know, after you come back with your plans about what needs to be.
Are you saying like paper? Like
Yes.
through the thing?
And this
Okay.
is the layover, not a no
Okay.
or a yes. It's a layover. And you just need to work with the city a little further, a little more information. They'll help you through it. And then it'll come back either next month or sometime after that.
If it's possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and-
then the only objection then is the parking, is that?
Well, that was the first and primary concern. I think the submitted site plan is not up to what is required for a site plan. It does not show property lines, dimensions, things like that. So we do need a more accurate and realistic plan, and
Okay.
probably a little bit more details on the proposal. You know, it's not common to have a front back unit that's converted from a single family home. So the floor plan does not get into much detail. There's gonna need to be fire rating separation. I don't know if floor plans have been developed with an architect or a builder, but
So-
more details on how this would realistically work. We don't want to get too far down the process and, you know, be in front of council, you know, and the board has, you know, this right as well. When I look at the plan submitted, it's not realistic. So I think we need improved plans, you know,
Yeah.
and
So the plan for the duplex is that it'd be the basement. So there's not any additional exterior that's changing on the outside of, you know, putting a parking pad there if necessary. It's more so the basement's converted into an apartment unit.
okay, and that wasn't represented in the submittal. So we need those details, and you're gonna need a separate ingress and egress for, you know.
Yep.
So I think better developed plans. Well, I, you know, this isn't something that the city will provide for you. You would have to work with, you know, surveyor, engineer, architect, you know, even home builder, somebody who develops plans and floor plans. And I'm not saying you're going to the level of a building permit submittal, but I think it needs to be realistic and how this unit's gonna be converted.
Gotcha.
I apologize. I should have been more clear. Didn't mean the city was going to draw your plans for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're gonna have somebody an engineer or architect, like Eric said, and the city will tell you what will work, what will not work, according to a engineered set of plans.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. Did you give your recommendation?
Staff recommends layover.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Agenda item number 12 was also on consent. It was pulled off. It was on consent for approval. It's case C10-99-44. Applicant Dragon Storage request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Waterford Crossing. Location 7110 North 154th Ave. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Hello, my name is Mike Welniak, owner of Dragon Storage. Address is 15803 Pacific Street. We've actually had one of these cell towers actually put in one of our other storage locations. They did a great job. I think everybody's concern was cell towers were those old cell towers, those big monsters. These are very slim, they're very small. You really don't notice them out there anymore. So I'd like to see if the planning board would approve of this concept.
Mike, real quick, from where the cell tower is going to fit a set going east across your property there, how many feet is that? Going east all the way across your property?
So actually the cell
It's over 100 feet, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So
So
if
it's,
it fell, if it, to the south of that, that's over 100 feet also,
Oh, yeah.
down to the street?
yes,
Okay,
yep,
all right. Thank you, sir.
you bet.
All right. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Roth, Great Plains Land Services, 508 North Polk Circle, Papillion, Nebraska. I'm actually representing Omaha Cellular Telephone Company, doing business as Verizon Wireless, a party to the major amendment. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have. So.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
My only question, I think this was covered in the recommendation report, but this will not just be a Verizon tower, right? Like any telecommunication company can use the cell phone tower, is that right?
Correct. It is built for a co-locator.
Okay.
It's only 100-foot tall monopole. Verizon will be the owner. Of course, we're renting property from Mr. Welniak, but yes, it would be open for co-location. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Good afternoon. I'm Melissa Crawford. I live at 7610 North 153rd Circle in Waterford. I apologize. I just found out about this today, and so I was already downtown and dressed casually, so my apologies for the casual appearance here today. I do serve on the board of the Waterford Homeowners Association. So I'll start with the concern first from a health perspective. The RF waves from cell towers have not been proven to be safe. According to the American Cancer Society, most expert organizations agree that more research is needed to clarify this, especially for long-term effects. The WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified the radiation from both cell phones and cell towers as a Class 2B possible carcinogen in 2011. Cell towers use similar radio frequency radiation as cell phones. The difference between a cell phone and a cell tower environment, however, is that the cell phone is used only intermittently and at higher power. So while the intensity of a cell tower is much less than one would receive by holding a cell phone to your head, the emissions from a cell tower are continuous. Thus, the aggregate exposure over time coming from being close to a cell tower can be significant. A child living nearby or in a school with a nearby cell tower will be exposed every moment he or she is at home or at school. The latency for development of cancer after exposure to radio frequency is long, often up to 20 years for brain cancer. Thus, the cancer effects of exposing children will not be seen immediately, but they will have elevated risk of cancer for years to come. Studies done in several countries have reported elevated rates of cancer, especially leukemia, in residents living near cell towers. Unfortunately, cancer is not the only disease of concern. Other studies have found individuals living near cell towers have abnormal levels of several different hormones and suffer from reduced cognitive ability. Furthermore, there's increasing recognition of the fact that some people, including children, are exceptionally sensitive to electromagnetic fields and show the syndrome of electrohypersensitivity. This is characterized by headache, brain fog, and reduced ability to learn, often accompanied by nausea and gastrointestinal and cardiovascular symptoms. Placement of cell towers should be as far from possible from any place where humans are present. Certainly, having a cell tower near a home where anyone lives, but especially children, could be dangerous to their health. In addition, cell phone towers decrease property values. The Appraisal Institute, the largest global professional measurement for property appraisers, spotlighted the issue of cell towers and the fair market value of a home and educated its members that a cell phone tower will, in fact, decrease the value of that home. There was some work done by Dr. Sandy Bond, whose study indicated that property values decreased from 2% to 20%, with the decrease becoming greater the closer you live to the cell tower. When we're talking about a cell tower within 100 feet of some of the homes in our neighborhood. Our property values already took a hit when the applicant built storage units at Waterford Crossing. I've lived in Waterford for 16 years. We built houses with the understanding that Waterford Crossing would be, there's even a walking path to it, that we would be able to walk, there'd be restaurants, it'd be kind of a lovely place for us to visit that would enhance the value of our homes. Unfortunately, that is not what has been built there. So we do ask you to not let our property values take another hit by having a cell tower also in the neighborhood. I do thank you for your consideration. I urge that approval not be given for the major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Waterford Crossing. Please help us keep our families and our property values safe. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for me? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Any other opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Brandenburg. I am a resident of Waterford at 7208 North 154th Street.
Josh, just a second before you go any further.
Yes, sir.
Are these your kids?
Yes, they are. Those are my beautiful children and my bride.
I gotta tell you, what a group of well-mannered kids you have. They've been sitting there since 1:30 or earlier.
It hasn't been easy. And I don't think they so far have a great taste for the pleasures of government, but I really do appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to meet with you.
Excellent job.
So I am also concerned, like the previous speaker, about the installment of a cell phone tower, a 5G tower, so close to our home. The first thing I want to say is I received a notice of it right here on the 23rd, and the hearing is today. So it's really been like, 8 business days that we've had to kind of think about it, prepare, and life is chaotic. I got 4 kiddos, so we just started recently talking to our neighbors about it, knowing that the hearing was coming up, and I have to say that when I went and showed, I don't know if this will. There you go. When I went and showed this to many of my neighbors and showed them, who is within, the affected area on here, a lot of them said, I had no idea this was happening. So my neighbors don't know. I really appreciate Nicole with the other HOA who said that their neighborhood got to have a meeting and talk about it and figure out how this will affect them. And we haven't had that opportunity. I feel like it's kind of being rushed, and it's really concerning to me that my neighbors really have no idea. I also do want to say that I believe it to be a health risk. I know a lot of the studies say it's inconclusive, but we know it pushes out radiation. And radiation is an unnatural thing coming into our bodies. You can't expect an unnatural thing entering your body and having a natural impact. It's going to have an unnatural impact. And there's been lots of studies done. The most recent one or presentation I saw was from a PhD at UC Berkeley. His name is Joel Muskowskiewicz. I hope I said his name right, but he said that a child's brain absorbs 2 times the radiation than an adult brain does. And I brought my kids here for that reason. We're playing in the backyard, and they're going to be exposed to this every single day. And there is a school that just went up across the street. I know you guys can't, well, here. It doesn't show it right here, but here is the property. My house is right over in here, and then right up here is a school. So these, the kids at these schools are also going to be every single day exposed to more levels of radiation than normal. And we're playing with their health, you know, because it's inconclusive. Why take a chance? He also cited numerous studies, some in Germany, which found that people living within 400 meters, I'm definitely within 400 meters, found a 3 times as high risk of cancer. Israel found that if you lived within 350 meters, you have 4 times the risk of cancer within a 3 to 7 year state of living there. And we're talking about the whole school, and we're talking about my children. Austria also showed an increase of headaches, and so did Poland, or nausea. So there's absolutely risks that are coming out. People are noticing, and I really want to encourage you guys not to allow this to go up. Please deny the request today. We're looking at the potential of radiation that would cause future cancer harm. I went to an elementary school in St. Louis called Jana Elementary. You can probably go look it up and find that they had radiation in the water that was going near the school and high levels of it on the kindergarten playground. And now they're finding that all these kids had massive cases of leukemia and other cancerous causes because they didn't know, or there wasn't a confirmed consensus. So I ask you, please don't play with the risk of my children, the risk of the kids across the street here at the school. I really implore you guys to deny this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Josh. One
Yes.
thing. Did you
Yes,
say
sir.
there was, you just got your notification?
I got
on
it
the
on-
23rd, was there?
That was Saturday.
There's been no public meeting?
No, and when I go to my neighbors, they don't know about it. Well, one person knew about it. They're right next door to me, and they work for Verizon, so they said I'm not allowed to have an opinion. So.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Any other opponents wishing to speak? Sure, come forward.
Hi, my name is Sky Brandenburg, and I reside at 7208 North 150.
What was your name again?
Sky Brandenburg.
Maybe I should, instead of congratulating Josh on well-behaved kids, maybe it's you I need to.
That's very kind. We had to talk before we came in, but they're doing a great job. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Mine is maybe a different side of the argument as the prior people. My uncle works for US Cellular, and he actually builds towers. And I called him about this tower, and the second that I spoke to him, he said, "Oh no, that sucks." And so, excuse, that's his exact quote. His first question was, has there been a human impact study done? And we haven't even, our board hasn't talked about anything. We don't know anything going on. A lot of our neighbors don't know what's happening. And so we're just, kind of felt very blindsided. Like my husband said, we have 4 kids. It's really, really busy to stop, take time, come down here, round people up and call people. And so, all of that takes time. So to our knowledge, there hasn't been anything presented to us other than, the letter in the mail. Common sense, says radiation is bad. We have a family friend who passed away from radiation poisoning. My brother was exposed to something in the 80s that everyone thought was safe to use. You guys have probably seen the commercials with Roundup and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so he died when he was 4 years old. And so now it feels like we're going through that again, being exposed to something there's not a lot of studies done on. And but we know common sense says radio waves going to our children is not a good thing. And so at this point, it's just heartbreaking that it's going up so close to our home. So, and like my husband said, it's a natural thing. It's an unnatural thing entering our natural bodies, and it feels like there's going to be adverse consequences for not only our children, but for all the residents around the area and things like that. It's something that we're forced to take in. Cell phones are a choice. Electronics are a choice. I think you noticed my kids don't get electronics very often. I know they have to learn from them and the benefit of that, but I do try and limit the electronics that they're on quite a bit. So to have something forced upon my family is again very difficult. The second point is that and they said, you know, they're a lot smaller than they used to be, but they're an eyesore, and the value of your home goes down with them. And people prior to me had probably presented that in a much better way. But you know, will the decrease of our value of our home affect our taxes and things like that? And so anyway, there are plenty of towers. My uncle was saying there's towers we don't even know about. They're putting them up all over, not necessarily towers, but things that help with cell phones, Wi-Fi, all of those kinds of things. So why do we need this extra tower to go up so close to people, homes, families, schools? In the end, what's more important? Is the money earned from a tower? Is the money earned from a tower more important, or is the potential health risk to our kids more important? So I just leave with that kind of comment. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, close public hearing. Michelle,
Yes.
did you want to come up and
Sure.
address some of their concerns and
I would love to.
the concern about a
Regarding the health care, I can't
name
address
and
any of the
address
health.
again, please?
Oh, excuse me, Michelle Roth, Great Plains Land Services, 508 North Polk Circle, Papillion, Nebraska. Representing Omaha Cellular Telephone Company, doing business as Verizon Wireless. I can't address any of the health concerns. I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet. To my knowledge, nothing proven, and I can't address any of that. But I did do a community outreach, and I don't know why these folks didn't get notified. We did send letters out. I worked with planning and got a distro of everyone that was advertised to. We did send out letters. I did a meeting via Zoom. And that meeting was last Thursday, I believe, 7 p.m. I did have 2 attendees, one north on 156th on the west side. He has I want to say it's north. I'm kind of a little directionally challenged sometimes, but he has a kennel, a dog kennel on the north side. He attended, and then a gentleman in the neighborhood there in Waterford, I want to say to the east. Those are the only 2 people that attended. We chit-chatted about 40 minutes. They just had some general questions. One did have some about health concerns, 5G. I did send some literature that I had gotten from a trade organization that I did send that information and mail that to that gentleman. Mostly view, am I going to see it from my home? Was the other gentleman's concern where we're going to be blocking traffic, bringing in utilities. I didn't anticipate any traffic blocking at all. I did go over a little bit of the design where we're putting all the equipment in a storage unit. There is a generator there. It's only used for emergency if there's power outage for an extended period of time. You know, we do have a 911 responsibility as well. So that's only to be used in a case of emergency and a long-term outage. But we do have a brick retaining wall around that. We're utilizing the brick that was utilized on Mr. Wilniak's, that's Dragon Storage's facade there of their building. So to kind of blend. So we kind of got a little retaining wall around that so it's not real visible. And again, all the equipment, the auxiliary equipment, like the cabinets and things are in a storage unit. So, but that'll also kind of surround that little base of the tower somewhat too. And then we have the trees along 156 are being left in place, obviously, for some screening as well. The those are just the kinds of things we discussed at the meeting. It wasn't confrontational or anything. It was just wanting some information, and I tried to provide what I could. Again, I don't know why they weren't notified, but so I would say we probably sent the mailings out 10 days prior to the meeting. So.
I'm a little conflicted here. Obviously, they didn't get
Yes.
the notification, but you did try to have a public meeting. Is there any certain hardship that's going to be put on you if we laid this over so that you could go back to that neighborhood and have public meeting, where you could notify, or they can notify, or homeowners association can notify more people?
I'm thinking there's quite a period of time between now and city council as well. I'd be happy to meet with the neighbors and neighborhood association, provide our drawings, pictures. So I don't know if a layover is necessary, but maybe that I have some contact prior to city council. I would say, I know we did work with planning, and I know that neighborhood's been there a while, but I don't know, we didn't have any record of really anyone to contact for that neighborhood association. I don't know if it wasn't formally established. I don't know that much about that, but we did have trouble finding that. That's why we used the addresses that for the advertisement. That was our best way of getting the information out to the neighborhood, and that's kind of why we used that instead of going. And I did see the neighborhood association and looked at the Facebook page. And
yeah, I'm not saying you didn't.
No.
Yeah,
I'm just giving you all my attempts, you know.
Effort. Yes.
Yeah.
Melissa, did you say you're the head on the homeowners association?
Yeah, I'm on the HOA board. I'm the treasurer on the HOA board.
All right. So if you did want to have public meeting and the board decided to
I'd be happy
lay
to.
this, she's here. So.
Yep, I would definitely be happy to do that.
Okay. Any additional comments, questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric.
Yeah, so just procedurally, because this area is zoned mixed use, this is a major amendment to the mixed use development agreement. Typically, planning board and city council, if there's a use permit for a broadcast tower, the board or city council can waive height. That waiver of height up to a 100-foot tower is being incorporated into the mixed use agreement. My wife frequently reminds me that I am a social scientist, not an actual scientist, you know, so just a little joke there. So obviously I am not, I can't comment on the health aspect. I can say that is a common theme that we've heard over the years. You know, that the city of Omaha approved many cell towers dating back to 1997, I think is when it kind of took off. And you look at those agendas and there were multiple special use permits on each agenda. So that's a 25-year time period. I'm not aware of any studies. We have cell towers all over the place. The school probably has cell towers over there because that's fairly common. We do send out materials to a large group of entities, and that does include the Douglas County Health Department. We did not receive any correspondence from them or any time in the past regarding concern about cell tower and unsafety, or being unsafe. So I guess we would recommend approval to move forward. I would agree there is time between planning board and city council that another meeting could be had. We can help facilitate, provide any address information that we have available in our GIS system. If the board were to be inclined to lay it over, I would ask for the applicant to come back up to acknowledge an acceptability to an extension of the shot clock, which does apply to broadcast towers. But I would personally, say that this should probably move forward and that meeting happening before city council. So staff recommends approval of the major amendment to the Waterford Crossing Mixed Use Development Agreement, subject to submittal of 5 signed agreements prior to city council.
So Eric, we could make a motion with to lay over with the shot clock in mind, or we could make a motion for approval, but it's insistent upon a public meeting take place.
You could.
Before it goes on to city council, I should say.
Based on federal standards, I'm more comfortable with you requiring the public meeting before city council. The shot clock extension is not.
Okay.
Usually you need the applicant to agree to that.
Okay.
And we're not necessarily approaching a deadline, but if it gets stalled out too far, it can be problematic.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the major amendments to Waterford Crossing mixed-use development agreement, subject to submittal of 5 acceptable signed agreements prior to forwarding to the request to City Council for final action. I would just strongly encourage the applicant to reach out one more time to the Neighborhood Association.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Hay,
I'm going to vote no because I originally opposed this development from the very beginning because of the storage units, so my vote is no.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Before I make my vote, Michelle,
Yes.
Dave said strongly suggest
Yep.
that will happen.
Yes. Well, yes, I will talk with her right after the meeting. Yeah.
Okay, all right, then I will vote yes also, and folks, no, this goes to the city council also for final vote, so, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, let's see, agenda item number 14, that was on for approval on the consent agenda, it was taken off. It's case C10-22-292, applicant, City Sprouts, request rezoning from R435 to DR, location, northwest of 3rd and 4th Streets. Is the applicant here?
Yes, indeed. Hello, my name is Aaron French, representing City Sprouts at 4002 Seward Street. Again, appreciate the recommendation from planning for approval, but just wanted to come here and be open to, questions, comments, critiques from you all, and also from neighbors. About a proposal to rezone a section of land that we own in order to develop it as a thriving urban farm in Northeast Omaha in the Sherman-Levi Carter neighborhood. So happy to answer any questions or sit back down and keep this moving. So, yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other proponents?
Some letters, excuse me. I'm Joseph Higgins, 1110 East Camden Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68110. I run the Levi Carter Sherman Neighborhood Association, in which the urban farm is located. Of course, we support this. All the things we've heard today about affordability, part of that is food insecurity and food deserts. This is a relatively poor area of town, and we can't think of a better use. And we have several other, I'm involved with the Kiwanis in Florence. They support it, as well as their state district association. Nona also supported it, and she didn't get me the letter in time, but we had multiple supportees, and those are just copies. They're basically just letters of support. We're looking to further our engagement with the applicant, and hopefully we'll get the Sherman Community Center garden opened back up, and we'll be able to use it for the residents and also for the schools. That's all I got. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Joseph.
Thanks, Joe.
Any other proponents? Okay, seeing none, are there any opponents? Any opponents? Okay, going to close the public hearing. Joseph, did you pull this off the consent? Oh, City Sprouts did? Oh, okay. All right, I was wondering, because it was on for approval.
So I'll call Aaron up.
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
because you've sat through here, I guess if you could just take a moment, what does City Sprouts do with the produce that is grown? and
Absolutely.
Just touch on that briefly.
Yep, again, Aaron French, City Sprouts, 4002 Seward Street. We're a nonprofit organization working to address food insecurity and promote education around urban farming, gardening, and the culinary arts, as well as any sort of related topics here in Omaha. This farm, we own about 7 acres in the neighborhood, 3 of which we are currently farming, growing vegetables for the most part, most of which go to a food pantry through a really great partnership that we have with the Food Bank for the Heartland. So fresh, locally grown, culturally appropriate, and sensitive vegetables going to folks who need it for free. Essentially, in short, Eric, is what this land is doing. The proposal is really for infrastructure development, right? So we've made it through 1 growing season so far with just a shipping container and a tractor parked out in our field. We're hoping to build a greenhouse, a pole barn, so we can make this sort of more of a campus, place where people can come to learn about what we do, all while remaining in the crop production use of the development reserve zoning category. So.
That's interesting. Where does your funding come from?
All over. So generous donors here in Omaha, family foundations, the USDA, the Nebraska Department of Ag. So yeah.
I've taken a bread making class
Oh,
before,
okay.
so I.
There we go. We have another one coming up in like 2 weeks, I think. Sourdough making.
look
Yes.
at
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. So.
Can I become a chef like I see on TV?
You know, if you come to enough workshops, you probably can. Yeah.
I can't boil hot water.
Aaron, if you had said, if you said earlier that you had pulled it off just to talk about, I'm sorry if I missed it, I was taking notes.
That's totally fine. Yeah, I think that's part of like
keep track
just
of where I
wanting to
was.
be open, transparent,
Okay.
good neighbors to the folks in the neighborhood. So yeah.
All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron.
Appreciate it, y'all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Staff recommends approval.
Do we have yeah. We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Starting to mumble
Franklin.
here.
Yes. Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 6-0.
Agenda item number 16, case C10-22-295, C7-22-296, applicant Mount Calvary Lutheran Church, request rezoning from R435 and R535 to R5 with approval of a major amendment to the presumed conditional use permit pursuant to section 55883Q to allow religious assembly in the R5 district. Location, 5601 Leavenworth Street.
Hello, I am Caleb Van Wilden with Lamper and Anderson, 147110 West Dodge Road, here on behalf of the applicant. If you can turn the projector on here, just a picture of the site. This essentially is the addition of the parking lot on the northeast corner of the Mount Calvary Lutheran Church site. This is approximately 19 stalls. We have met extensively with city planning on this site already. We have been to a pre-app meeting and gone through a site plan review process. I believe this plan complies with all the recommendations we have heard to date, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Gary Gurnant, 1702 Ontario Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68108. I'm chairman of the Board of Trustees at Mount Calvary Lutheran Church, and this project falls under my umbrella. A number of years ago, one of our members passed away, and her estate left us a generous gift for 2 areas, one being scholarships and 2, the major improvements. And she only had 1 request under major improvement, and that was expanded parking, and we're here today in an attempt to honor that request. Part of my responsibility, and by urging, of course, by our engineering firm, was to meet with the neighborhood associations. I contacted Exarban Elmwood Park, their leadership, met with the president in her dining room, met her 2 dear cats. We had a wonderful discussion. She had 2 concerns, one being overflow parking from the church just to the east of us, and our particular project. My response to her was, number one, our overflow parking currently does not go on 55th Street. They typically use Marcy Street, which is the south of our campus. Her second concern was the removal of our church house. We told her our project could not work with the house still in existence. Not only are we demolishing the house, we've already removed our playground and a 121-year-old maple tree and a 65-year-old tool shed. And we have a little bit more to go before we start. And we haven't even turned a blade of dirt yet for the parking lot. Lastly, I stepped a little bit out and went across the street to the north. That is another neighborhood association, Dundee Memorial Park. I reached out to their leadership via Zoom, met with the president and their board, received very positive comments. One being, that's the church with the beautiful light tower. They are good neighbors. Mr. Chairman, I would ask for rebuttal time in case there's any opposition.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Greg. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Come forward, give your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is, sorry.
That's all right.
My name is Amber Davis, and I am the property owner of 5535 Marcy Street. I am the property that is directly south of the church, just to explain my proximity to the project. First, I want to just state that obviously the church is a very welcome neighbor to our street. We are in just review of these plans. We have noticed that they've taken a lot of time and care to bring increased aesthetics to the block, and they're otherwise, you know, from my perspective, have been very good neighbors, aside from some things that I'll discuss today. That being said, I would like to note a few things. First, I'm confused by the comment that just occurred in regard to the plans being reviewed by those in Exarban and Elmwood Park. I have spoken to quite a few of my neighbors, and to my knowledge, I do not believe that we were notified of this. I'm not sure if that was just a review, you know, with with the city council or whom that was reviewed by, but I do not believe that I was notified of this to be able to ask further questions. Beyond that, as I mentioned, I am directly south of the church, and my driveway actually faces the exit of the flow of traffic from the church on Sunday.
You're on Marcy Street then?
Yes.
On the south side of Marcy.
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the church is relatively quiet. Like I mentioned, they're great neighbors, but on Sunday, the traffic and the street parking absorption, which you're all probably well aware, we are mainly tutors on that street, so our garages are embarrassingly small, so we don't have a lot of places to put our vehicles. The parking absorption, especially on Sunday, is abundant. It is very difficult, in particular for my driveway. The streets are a little bit narrow, and when we have parkers on both sides, it's difficult to enter and exit my driveway as it is. So as it is, we do not park in the driveway on Sunday, just, you know, out of respect for our neighbors, the church. Also, the south parking lot, as I mentioned, does flow directly to my driveway, which I know that also prohibits some of our neighbors from parking in their driveway as well. The demographics of our block in particular is heavy in families and children. Some of our wonderful children on our street do require special care and assistance. And most of the children who are younger, they do come and go by foot down the street to play. And as you can imagine, on Sundays, that does require additional maneuvering through the excessive cars that are on the street. I definitely agree with the church that this actually demonstrates the need for additional parking. However, I also wanted to put on record that many of the neighbors have noticed majority of the Sundays where service is being held, there are numerous parking spots that are not being utilized. I think that the planning of this, I would just like to make some comments and ask for revisions. Those are very small issues. Unfortunately, after hours, this is activity not related to the church, but we do have a severe problem with very disruptive noise of people who are not associated with the church, presumably. If the pastor's preferred weekend activities are partying in the church parking lot, I'm very disappointed that I have not been invited as his neighbor. That was a joke. But I do not believe that it is the church attendees who are causing the disruptions, which most often is very, very loud booming of music. As some of you, I'm not sure where you reside, but Leavenworth is notorious for incredibly high traffic, which we hear all throughout the night with tires screeching and motors being loud of people who are kind of just racing the drag.
Amy, can I ask you, or I'm sorry, Amber?
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Have you contacted the church maybe on the next business day when they're in, letting them know that there are people possibly illegally using their property?
I haven't to this point. Like I said, I really appreciate the church being there. I've never had any issues with them beyond this. And I know that this is, again, I'm presuming, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct that this is not church activity that is occurring in the property.
Yeah, maybe if they have site security or some kind of monitoring, if you let them know about the activity, they could do something about it.
Yeah. That's in my conclusion, but I have a couple other things to say, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Thank you. So right now, the traffic of Leavenworth is barricaded from overflowing into Marcy by obviously just the proximity of the church. They do have an additional parking lot to the west, but they have installed permanent concrete barriers there, which does not allow vehicle traffic to cut through. In addition, there are streetlights to the west and east of our section of Marcy on Leavenworth that prohibits restricts the flow of traffic from coming directly into our neighborhood. The church, my apologies. Again, I agree with you. I think that this definitely demonstrates the necessity of a little bit of further control measures, in particular if we're adding another lot and a direct thoroughway that's going to open up directly to our street. So my request is for a question to be clarified on the record or stipulations to be included within the plans. I'm sure you've all reviewed the plans. It does make note of a gate, which will be used to control the flow of traffic. However, there's not stipulations surrounding that of how that will be controlled. As it is currently existing, we are in need of some supervision of the lot. I agree with you. I'm more than happy to bring that up with the church, and I'd actually like to work in in hand with them, but also with this piece of I'm sorry, with this information being processed, I think I would like to request that there's something within this to stipulate a little bit more security measures, specifically to require accountability of the gate being locked outside of church times, which is really the majority of the problems, the problem times. In an ideal scenario, I would be fully opposed to the addition of a drive in any capacity that allows the public vehicle access to flow from the high-density Leavenworth that is coming at dangerous speeds potentially through our neighborhood. But as I mentioned, I would like to work cooperatively with the church. So I have a few things for consideration that I think also may be beneficial that I'd like to propose. One is just to completely remove the gate and amend it to require permanent barriers that are coming through, to prevent traffic coming through the new driveway. That would obviously allow for additional parking, but it would also allow churchgoers to walk through the parking lot, allow our neighborhood residents to walk through, our children to walk through, but still allow the additional parking that the church very much needs. Or I'm not sure if it would be possible to put a new traffic light or some kind of a traffic control solution to be installed to try to control the traffic, and in particular, as I mentioned, implementing something that puts some kind of stipulations about the church repercussions if the gate is left open after time. Additionally, if we could put a stipulation requiring some monitoring of the church parking lot, again, for those after-hour disruptions, which really, it's unfortunate, and it is very, very disruptive to us. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other opponents wishing to speak?
Hi, I'm Barbara Giannato. I live at 5538 Marcy Street. I've lived there 24 years, and their entrance exit to Marcy Street is at my property line. Years ago, there was a home behind my house, and they were doing the same thing they want now. They removed the home. They wanted a drive-through from Leavenworth Street to Marcy Street. And we came down and they were denied. And this is what they're asking for again. I just don't find it to be safe. I don't feel comfortable with a gate. I know they're saying they'll lock it up every time they're not using it. I just don't feel very comfortable with that. I know as well as you know, if you find a shortcut, you're going to take it. You're not going to use the main streets. And I want to address your concern about contacting the church about issues. There has been several issues with noise, drugs, and I was told early on I was supposed to call 911. So being a church,
Did you? Good idea if you see drug activity. That's probably a good suggestion.
I had friends over, and they wanted to know what I was talking about because I keep talking about this parking lot and what they're going to do. And so we walked over there, and there was cars parked. And after we walked home, they said, "Did you smell that?" I said, "Yes, I did." And they were smoking because it smelled like skunk, and there wasn't a skunk around.
Right.
So I just want them to understand that we live there 24/7. I've told Mr. Gannett that years and years ago. it's just a residential area. And it's our home, and this is where we live, and we have children. And we want to protect our homes and our children.
Okay.
And that's why I would love a permanent barrier for them not able to go from Leavenworth to Marcy Street.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for
Barbara.
listening. Thank you.
Okay. Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Gary, you wanted to come up?
Maybe I'll start with a couple of the, Caleb Van Wilden, Lamp Nearson, 147110 West Dodge Road. I'll start with a couple of the engineering or procedural comments that occurred there. It sounds like there's a lot of other issues that we'd like to discuss. First off, I am sympathetic to some of the issues that were brought up today. To talk specifically about the gate, the intent of that is to be used only during church operation hours, which are Sunday mornings, very much not at those peak times we discussed at length earlier today. That's been shown on the plan from the beginning. It's something that would be operated by the church, and they'd be responsible for opening and closing. I don't believe there's ever been any city staff recommendation to exclude that or to modify that. That has been on there since the beginning. Also, to talk about the flow of traffic, this is not intended to be a thoroughfare or a cut through. Again, only specific times where that would be in use when the church is meeting on Sunday mornings. The parking situation that both individuals discussed, I believe this proposed parking will try to help the existing parking situation by taking 19 cars out of the neighborhood to the south and putting them in the church parking lot. There is no on-street parking on Leavenworth, so the overflow parking from the church facility does have to go south. It is the only available street in the area that they're allowed to park on. As far as the additional activities and the timing for the church, I'll let Gary speak to that, and I'd love to hear recommendations from city staff. I have never worked through a gate operation statement. Again, we're just asking for a conditional use permit to do the parking lot, and then also to start the process in the rezone. There has also been a plat, an admin plat that is submitted to the city that was at the request of city planning staff. That is in process, but it cannot be finalized until we work through the rezoning process. Apart from this, there will also be a ZBA and an ABA that we will have to work through to allow this. There's really no other options for the church, which is what Gary talked about earlier. So this was the extensive path that the church is willing to go to try to provide parking for its church members and also comply with the wishes of the church member that donated the money. Any questions from planning staff on the engineering side of things?
I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Gurnett, 1702 Ontario Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68108. Initially, there was going to be a drive-through between Leavenworth and Marcy Street. I raised holy toothpicks over that because of the situation that we had on the west side lot back in 2004. There was never an intent to let parking or drivers go through that area. The reason being there wasn't is because the Omaha Public Power District, yes, Barb mentioned that we had a house there. That was the principal's house that, when our school was in operation. And when we decided to expand the parking back in 2004 or just prior to that, the house and tree that was there and a shed were removed to make that parking lot and our new elevator addition to the building suitable and allowable under city regulations. We can't let, back then in 2004, we're not going to let traffic drive through there once because Omaha Public Power District installed a huge above ground transformer there. One of those huge, it's bigger than this podium box there. And then they required us to put in 2 stanchions. And I know them well because I have to repaint them every year, bright yellow. So there was never going to let traffic go through there to Marcy Street. When the plan started to develop for here at 5519, we noticed that parking or traffic could go through there. And I immediately said, we need a gate there. And the gate would be opened for Sunday service and usually for the Easter holiday and the Christmas holiday. The pastor, the board of elders, the ushers, and the board of trustees will all have keys to open and close that gate during church services and those events that I just mentioned.
Barry, after church, does someone typically lock the building?
Yes, sir.
So whoever's locking the building, that's just going to be part of their procedure, lock the gate.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
It's typically a board of elder is assigned every Sunday and at every event to assist the pastor. And as I mentioned, the board of elders will have those keys and it will lock that gate.
Okay.
Is the access from the north parking lot to the south parking lot something the city's requiring, or is that something that you guys want?
In the new addition, sir?
Yeah.
That is something that we asked for.
Okay.
And to allow traffic that came in and used the south lot, that they would have another means of exit going out on Leavenworth Street. And those that come in off of Leavenworth Street, if that lot is full, they have access to the south lot to park, because it was mentioned, I believe Amber mentioned that there were some empty spaces on Sundays. Currently, we have instructions from our pastor that they would like to have our west lot available for our visitors and our seniors. So we typically park, my age group, typically park on Marcy Street to accommodate that request from the pastor. With this new lot, those of us that use Marcy Street will be taken off of the street, opening that back up again and being able to use the new lot. And lastly, I know that it was mentioned how long people have lived there. I would like the board to understand the church has been there since 1924. It's been there a long time. The school was built in 1950. And as for the noise, I've advised Barb on several occasions what she has followed up on, and we are grateful for that in regards to noise. She has called me numerous times over the years, well past bedtime, to make me aware of what was going on. And I did encourage her to call 911, as I would do anybody that would call and say, hey, there's something we thought you should know and it's going on right now. I said, would you please call 911? Maybe less than a handful of people felt uncomfortable with doing that. So I wound up calling 911 from my home and then heading over there at whatever hour it was to see what could be done about it. Have we done anything else to stop that? On our west lot, at the entrance of that lot, we have a sign posted warning: unlawful use of this property is prohibited. Same sign on the entrance to the south lot was there. It was stolen. We have a new one on order that will say the same thing. And just prior to the pandemic, the church council met because we were reacting to the concerns of our neighbors in regards to what was going on in the lot after hours. And we thought maybe we could apply for, and I made the suggestion based upon from my previous experience in government, that we apply for the closed property ordinance, where we would have a sign posted, and certain hour to certain hour, if you're on this property and you don't belong here, the police can do an automatic arrest and they didn't have to call us. I lost that vote by one from the church council.
Why?
As I listened today to some of the new concerns, they have my word that I will bring it back up. I do sit on the church council, and I will bring that measure up again, that we apply for closed property, and that might give our neighbors some relief in regards to what happens there after hours.
Why would they not want that?
I'm baffled, sir. I don't know.
It just seems logical.
I thought I had a good argument.
How many members do you have in your church?
112.
Okay, and how many services do you have on Sunday?
We have 2 services a week, one 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning and one at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning.
Okay. So not a lot.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary? Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Hey, I do have one. Maybe I do have one more question. Okay. Gary, maybe if you could come back up. So, I don't know how expensive they are, but the gate that you're putting in on that new lot there, is there a possibility you could put gates on Marcy Street?
Ooh. Truthfully, we've never thought about doing that. Yeah. We had thought about putting an additional gate on the Leavenworth Street side in addition to the one that is right at the edge of the building as you see on the print on the screen.
I was just thinking if the
current gate, you're asking if we would install one down here off of Marcy Street.
Maybe a 2-arm gate or something like that.
I can certainly.
I threw that out just as a suggestion, just because if there are problems that exist after hours, and you can't get that sign that you want for one thing, which you should be able to do, but that might just control it a little bit. But then it'll cost money.
That might inhibit the neighbors if they use that for extra parking when they have parties. Or, you know.
That's true.
So I'll jump in there. I typically, when we have gates adjacent to streets or right-of-way, they need to be set back a certain distance from that right-of-way. Typically, it's 25 feet. We do have Ryan Haas from Public Works that could come down, but that's typically what's required. In case somebody went to turn in and, it's closed and there's enough area to turn in. So I don't know if that would be feasible with the current layout of the parking lot.
Well, thanks for shooting that down there.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Eric, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just a few items. Okay. Obviously we have it recommended for approval. Due to the civic area, there is an increase of impervious coverage, which is supported, typical that we have civic sites within residential zoning. So that would need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then there's also a need for a little bit of additional landscaping on the east side of the new parking lot. On the site plan, there is specific note that the proposed gate to stop travel from north to south outside of church times. City staff believes that is adequate and a new condition doesn't need to be added. We think that is sufficient, and if there was a problem, although I would highly doubt that it would ever get to this point, but if that was a problem of not being adhered to, of the gate being locked up at the times that Mr. Gurnant just spoke to, you could always bring it back for a show cause hearing. But I would find that to be extremely unlikely, and just knowing and following Gary from his times on the city council and throughout his career, just extremely trustworthy and honorable. So I would throw that out. I don't think, just the comments about, if illegal activities are taking place, on the church parking lot, we would also encourage calling police. I know it's not typically an emergency, and sometimes they're dealing with things, but they have staff to handle these types of activities. So we would also recommend that advice. I don't think there's anything else I need to touch on. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R435 and R535 to R5, and approval of the major amendment to the presumed conditional use permit. subject to the 7 conditions in the report.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion, go ahead. Go ahead.
I motion for approval of the rezoning from R4 35 and R5 35 to R5. Approval of the major amendment to the presumed conditional use permit to allow religious assembly, subject to the 7 conditions in the recommendation report.
We have a motion, a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Moving on, agenda item number 17, case C10-22-294, applicant Southside Redevelopment Corporation, doing business as Canopy South. Request rezoning from R5 to LC, location 3031 Upland Parkway. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good afternoon, Cesar Garcia, Executive Director of Southside Redevelopment Corporation, DBA Canopy South. I'm here as the applicant and talk about the rezoning from the building on 3031 Parkway from R5 to limited commercial. So a little background on our organization. Canopy South is a nonprofit organization working on the revitalization of Southside Terrace Indian Hill neighborhood. We've been doing this for the past 3 years in partnership with the City of Omaha and the Omaha Housing Authority. We believe that in this area, this site, which was originally a high, heavy commercial, or heavy industrial, zoning, and was then rezoned to R5 based on some of the the studies that we were doing at that time with a grant that we received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We thought that there would be a great opportunity for creating new affordable housing in this area. After that, and based on different approaches and studies that we've done, we realized this was a great opportunity not only to maintain this structure as it is and renovate it, but also to make of this building a great community center, including this place where we house my organization, Canopy South, will have the opportunity to be on connections and be located in a place where people have accessibility to us, give us feedback, and continue working directly with the community in the redevelopment of Southside Terrace and Indian Hill.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Comments, questions from the board? None? Eric?
Yeah, so, sometimes in a good attempt for good projects to be spoken about at the public hearing, sometimes it gets a little lengthy, so thanks for sitting and coming down, obviously. There wasn't neighbor, opposition or anything that we didn't put this on the consent agenda, but, there's certain projects that we feel like, should be discussed in the public hearing. So, yeah, Cesar did a great summary. Obviously, we talked about this in the pre-meeting, formerly city-owned, got rid of the heavy industrial, thinking it might be residential use, but with the proposed renovation of the building, staff is definitely supportive of taking back that zoning up to a commercial district that is appropriate and can utilize the uses that Canopy South will utilize. So, staff recommends approval of the rezoning.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move approval of the rezoning from R5 to LC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay. For September, do we have a motion on the pre-meeting and public meeting minutes?
Motion to approve September's for October's pre-meeting.
October, yeah, I'm sorry.
October's pre-meeting
October.
and regular meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Forgot we're in
Rosacker.
November.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Pate.
Yes.
Morris.
Tim.
Moore.
Mike, I forgot we're
Franklin.
in November.
Rosacker. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved.
Yes.